Hello, champions, and welcome back to PW English. And I am your Diksha ma'am. And here we are going to start with a very, very important chapter of human physiology, and that is breathing and exchange of gases. All right, so let's get started. I hope you have covered all the topics of biomolecules. If not, just go and cover that chapter up and then start with this one. It's really very important to make your schedule and go step by step. So, what is your schedule? Schedule is not always about time, it's about the steps, right? So, first go do the biomolecule, complete it, mark all the PYQs, and just come back here with this chapter that is breathing and exchange of gases, right? So, breathing and exchange of gases, if I'm talking about NEET, it's really, really, really very important. Why? Because you know how much questions can appear in the exam, around 2 to 3, and 2 to 3 is a lot, right? Okay, so it's a really very interesting chapter because it help us to understand our very important system, and that is breathing. That how do you respire? It's really very easy. So just like that, with so calm and serene, we are going to start the chapter, and the same way we are going to finish it. So no stress. Whenever you get it, breathing and exchange of gases. All right, so let's get started. First of all, the question: what is breathing and respiration? So most of you must get confused with this. Breathing, respiration, same, different. What is it? These are two different things, right? What is a breathing? Breathing is just exchange of gases. You are taking in the fresh air and you are exhaling out the foul air. Then what is respiration? Whatsoever air you have taken in, it contains a mixture of gases, right? Air is a mixture of gases. So here, in this air, the two gases that are very much important for you is oxygen and CO2, right? So in the air, in the fresh air, we have a lot of oxygen, but we have less CO2. So what we are going to do in respiration is, with the help of lungs, we are going to take in the oxygen, and from there we are going to give air the CO2 from your body, right? We are just doing the exchange. So just breathing is you are taking in fresh air and you moving out the foul air. But in respiration, you take in the oxygen, and then this oxygen goes to your tissues, and tissues burn your calories or your glucose with the help of this oxygen. That is oxidation, and then produces a lot of energy. That's why you are sitting and doing and performing all the activities. Fine. So, what happen is, what is breathing? Breathing is just the taking in, taking in fresh air and exhaling out or moving out the foul air. That what is respiration? It is the oxidation of food. Oxidation of food to form energy. To form energy. Just a simple step. The opposite of photosynthesis. So what happen is, you have C6H12O6. Now you better know what is C6H12O6. I have taught you the biomolecules, so you must be knowing what is C6H12O6. This is glucose. So whenever there is oxygen, the glucose gets burnt up, right? So when you burn the glucose in the presence of oxygen, the aerobic respiration takes place, and what is produced? CO2 and water with a lot of ATP, right? That's your energy currency. All right, guys. So this is what happened in respiration. In breathing, it's just taking in the fresh air and moving out the foul air. So we are going to talk about all this thing in this chapter. There is nothing more, but we are just moving around the breathing and respiration. So for understanding this process, you need to know what are your respiratory organs, right? So what are the respiratory organs you have, or what type of respiration you do, or what type of the body anatomy or body system do you have, what type of organs do you have, how the air is moving in, how it is moving out, what volume of air do you take in. So everything about it, right? So let's just see everything about your breathing and respiration. So first of all, what are the various types of respiration? There are two types of respiration in this in on this entire earth. One is the direct, another is indirect. So if I'm talking about us, the humans, so we consider ourselves as the most complex organism, the one which are on the top of the game, which are on the top of the evolution, right? So we are very complex. So we are taking in the oxygen with the help of our respiratory passages, and then the oxygen goes into the lungs and then into the tissues. So our air is not in the direct contact with the tissues, rather the air is just going into the lungs, right? Understand? Our air is going into the lungs. From lungs there is exchange of gases, and then the gases move to the tissue. This is what happened in us, right? So is there any direct contact of my liver cell with the air in the surrounding? No, there is no direct contact. So this type of respiration is indirect. That means there is no direct contact, of air with body tissues. So generally this occur in all those organisms which have respiratory organs, which have complex system. It occurs in organisms with complex system. Fine. Example, I am standing in front of you, human. What about the direct? Here the organism is so simple, like it's a unicellular organism like your amoeba. So it's the only organism, the entire body is the single cell only. So all the air is in contact with the body. If I say I have this organism which is unicellular, so the air, surrounding air, is in direct contact. So whatsoever respiration is taking place, it is taking place directly through the body surface or through diffusion. So in the direct respiration, the body cell or entire organism, because it is unicellular, is in direct contact with air. So this include all those organisms which show the respiration through diffusion. So here respiration occurs through body surface or diffusion. Body surface or diffusion. Body surface or diffusion, right? So example, we have unicellular organism, and another is your poriferans, lower organism, your ciliatrata. So all these organisms which are lower invertebrates, basically I'm talking about lower invertebrates. They are very simple. They don't have much respiratory organs. They don't have lung like us. So there the respiration is quite very simple. Understood? Complex organism will be having the organs like lungs. So the body cells are away from the air. Here the organism is single celled, so the air is in direct contact with the body cell. Next, another types of respiration. So again there is another category. What is this? Aerobic and anaerobic. You must have heard of it. In anaerobic, the respiration takes place in the absence of oxygen. That means if there is no sufficient oxygen, the organism will respire in a certain way. If there is oxygen, it will respire in the another way. So aerobic one, when there is oxygen. So oxygen present. Or better say, it occurs in the presence of oxygen. Presence of oxygen. But if I talk about the anaerobic, I cannot say it occurs, I just cannot say the oxygen is present or absent. That will be absolutely incorrect. There are certain organisms, even if the oxygen is present, they will not respire aerobically, right? So here the correct definition will be the organisms, they show the respiration without the help of oxygen. So here the respiration takes place without the use of oxygen. Without the use of oxygen. All right, guys. So aerobic, we respire normally aerobically. You all know that. So the major topic to discuss here is who are those organisms that respire anaerobically. First of all, the best example we have here is your yeast. Yeast respire anaerobically. If I talk about us, we also have something where we respire anaerobically. We have discussed that in the skeletal muscle in structural organization in animals. What was it? Your skeletal muscles. Whenever skeletal muscle, whenever the skeletal muscle, it respires anaerobically. What is the product formed? Lactic acid. And this is how it gets fatigue. Whereas yeast produce alcohol as the byproduct. Also, in our case, there is another body cell or the part that performs anaerobic respiration. You just, if you can guess it, if you want to, what is that? Okay, let me give you a hint. That's your part of a blood where there is no nucleus. Yes. So in blood, you have a cell without nucleus. What is that cell? Which is that cell? That is your RBCs. So RBCs do not have nucleus because they want a room for hemoglobin. If they do not have that nucleus, how it is going to respire? Is that the only nucleus reason of anaerobic respiration? No. Apart from nucleus, it does not have mitochondria. And you know, for aerobic respiration, you need to have mitochondria. So RBCs, since they do not have mitochondria, this is how they cannot respire aerobically. So here, RBC. And what is the product form? Alcohol, right? So I remember when I was teaching offline, one of a student asked me, "Ma'am, that's great. Our RBC is producing alcohol. Then why don't we feel dizzy all the time?" The amount of alcohol is so less that you just cannot feel it, or body cannot, make that sense. Also, we have liver to take care of all these things, right? So RBCs and skeletal muscle in humans, in us, we respire or they respire anaerobically. Otherwise, our respiration is aerobic with the help of oxygen. All right. Apart from this, what are the other organisms that produce that respires anaerobically? Your cellulose fermentation in ruminants. Those fermentation in ruminants. What are ruminants? Like cows, like buffaloes. So there in their stomach, the cellulose get fermented, right? In ruminants, like cow. All right. Okay. So these are some of the examples of your anaerobic respiration. Apart from this, let me just tell you one more example, right? And that is your endoparasite, like your tapeworm inside your intestine, like scaris, because there in the intestine no air is going on, right? Actually what happen is there is less oxygen or no oxygen conditions, and these parasite, they live inside that only, so they have to respire anaerobically. So endoparasite like tapeworm and scaris, they live in intestine, so they respire anaerobically. All right, so this was a type of respiration. Let's talk about the respiratory organs. Now we are not just talking about humans, we are talking about everything. So if I say everything, means entire animal kingdom. So nature has given us the respiratory organs according to our needs, according to what type of body we have and what type of habitat we are living in. Habitat means the place you live. Are you living in water? Are you living on land? Are you the aerial one? Aerial means that flies in the air, right? So according to your complexity, are you very simple organism? If you are simple, you will be doing diffusion. Or you're very complex like human, then you will be having lungs. If you're complex and if you're living in water, you will be having gills. So according to habitat means the place where they live, and what and the complexity of the body, complexity of organism. That means if it is unicellular or multicellular, it has organs, it doesn't have organs, just like that. So we have classified the respiratory organs according to these two things. What are these two? Whether the body is simple or complex, or where it is living. So let's get started with the animal kingdom. I know their animal kingdom is so interesting. It fascinates a lot of kids. So let's see what type of animals we have and how do they respire. Otherwise, animal kingdom, we will also be doing that in detail. And trust me, that's really, really very interesting chapter. I think you have done that chapter. Vicky sir has taught you, right? So it will be easier for you to, tell me the answers. So it's just like a quick revision for you. So if I talk about one way, that is simple diffusion over the entire body surface. Simple diffusion is one type of respiration. All right. So here the organism does not have proper respiratory organs. So these are lower invertebrates. These are flatworms, your platyhelminthes, like this one is planaria. Which is this organism? Planaria. Or your poriferans or your ciliate. All these are lower invertebrates, or these are lower non-chordates. These are the first three phylums in your animal kingdom. And whenever if you have noticed in animal kingdom, we study the animal kingdom according to complexity in evolution. Like we start from porifera, we end to the humans. Porifera the simplest one, and humans the most complex one. So these are very simple ones, and they respire through simple diffusion. All right, moving further to next. Earthworms. Earthworms have moist cuticle. Actually, this was the video, but I don't think so this is working anyways. So you can see this is the soil all over, and this organism is your earthworm. You can see the earthworm skin is so glistening, it's shiny. That means it's moist, right? It is shiny because it's moist. So if an organism have a thin, vascular, and moist skin, there are three criterias: thin, vascular, and moist skin. The organism can undergo a respiration where the air can move in and move out through the skin. That is known as cutaneous respiration. So the respiration that occurs through moist cuticle is also known as skin. All right, cuticle is also known as skin. So that type of respiration is cutaneous. All right. So what are the criteria for cutaneous respiration? First, the skin should be moist, it should be thin, and it should be highly vascular. Vascular means it should have a lot of blood supply. It should have a lot of blood supply. All right, moving further. Tracheal tubes. So this is your favorite insect, that is cockroach. All right. So cockroach is an insect. An insect belongs to phylum Arthropoda. So in Arthropoda, we have a very large class, that is class Insecta, in which comprises of all the insect, your honeybee, your ants, your mosquito, your cockroach, everything like that. So they respire through a tube like things. These are known as tracheal tube. Basically, it consists of spiracles, which are the openings, trachea, and tracheoles. So the tube-like structures are present, which actually innervates the tissues of the body, that goes inside the tissues of the body. So that's the tracheal tube, right? So okay, let's just repeat. Simple diffusion was in Porifera, Ciliate, Platyhelminthes. Cutaneous respiration was in earthworm. Tracheal tubes in the insect. Moving further to next. Gills. So as I've told you, the gills are usually present in which organism? Aquatic organism. So here, aquatic arthropods and mollusks have a special type of gills which are less developed than the gills in the fishes, right? So gills are present in aquatic arthropod and mollusk, right? Remember, gills are in the organism that lives in water. So here, aquatic arthropods and mollusks. You can see here, that's the aquatic arthropod. It's a crab, right? So here, these are structure, filamentous. These are gills. What are these? These are gills. So the water enters into the gills and it take the oxygen from the water only. Like we take the oxygen from the air, aquatic organisms take the oxygen from the water. Fine. Next, invertebrates, right? All those were invertebrates. Now these are vertebrates. So first, as I've told you, fishes, these are gills in fishes. They are also filamentous but more developed than the gills in the aquatic arthropods and mollusks. Next, so the fishes have gills. Next, we'll talk about lungs. So lungs are present in all the terrestrial organism, amphibian, reptiles, aves, and mammals. Fine. So here we can see amphibian lung. So in evolution, what we see, amphibians are not a true land vertebrate, though they come on land. With respect to fishes, fishes were completely aquatic, whereas amphibians, some were aquatic and others they actually come to the land, but again they are dependent upon the water for their breeding. Like frog, you can see frog moving here and there, but whenever it has to breed, it goes to the water. So these are not true land animals. The first two land vertebrates were your reptiles. So as comparison to amphibian lungs, the reptilian lungs are more developed. As the bird, now comes to the bird has to fly, and for flying you need more energy. So for more energy you need more oxygen for oxidation. When the glucose get oxidized, it will give energy, so that means we need more oxygen. So here the avian lungs, it has air sacs. Air sacs are additional chambers. What are they? They are additional chambers that supplement the respiration. What is the function? They supplement the respiration. If there are air sacs present, more air will move into the lungs. All right. But there is no exchange of gases that takes place in the air sac. The exchange of gases will take place in the alveoli only. And alveoli is present in the main lungs. Here. Then we have mammalian lungs, the most developed one. So all the organism which somehow lives on land, they have what? They have lungs. If I'm talking about amphibians, in amphibians, what do we have? Frog. So frog has a special case. Its larva, what is the larva of frog? Tadpole. It lives in water. So what should be its respiratory organ? These are gills. Fine. If I talk about adult can respire through skin, and the respiration that take place through skin is cutaneous. All right. The respiration that takes place through gills is bronchial. So wherever word comes bronchial respiration, straight away think of gills. Wherever the word cutaneous comes, just think of the skin. It can also respire through lungs. So the respiration that takes place through lung is pulmonary. And it can also take place through buccal cavity, and that is buccopharyngeal cavity. Buccopharyngeal cavity. In frog, the buccal cavity and pharynx are fused, so you call it as buccopharyngeal cavity. So in adult, these three are the means of respiration, and here in the larva, gills. So the respiration that takes place through gill is bronchial, the one that takes place through lung is pulmonary, and the one that takes place through skin is cutaneous. Cutaneous, so we have done in two organisms. One was your earthworm, and the second one, your frog. You know, the frog used to do in the rainy season. Yes. All right. Okay. So these were the various respiratory organs in the invertebrates and in the vertebrates. Let's move further. Now we are going to start with the human respiratory system. So it's always interesting to learn about our own system, right? You'll get to know a lot of things. You know, you get curious. First of all, you get to know about yourself, and second thing, you are already interested in biology, you want to be a doctor, so that's why you're curious, that's why you have taken the medical. And you know, when I was a child, the most interesting subject for me was zoology. And in zoology, the most interesting was the human physiology, because you know, when you get to know, oh, that's the thing that happened in my body, oh, this is how I see, oh, this is how I hear. So it's always interesting to know about yourself, right? So let's get started with this system. Human respiratory system. The system is divided into two things. One are your respiratory passages. What are passages? The places through which the air moves in and moves out, right? It's like the it's like the roads through which you move in or move out. Whereas the organ is your one main organ, that is lungs. That is lungs. So we have one pair of lungs. One pair of lungs. All right. So where is our lung present? If I talk about our body is divided into two parts. Upper part is thorax and lower is abdomen. Now, what is the thing that is dividing the body into thorax and abdomen? That is your muscular flap like structure. That's diaphragm. What is it? Diaphragm. All right. So, just here we have a muscular flap like structure. That's diaphragm. What it is made up of? Muscle. It is a muscular flap. All right. By this, your body gets divided into two parts, the thorax and abdomen. Thorax is an airtight chamber. What is this? It is airtight. It has a vacuum inside. In this is present your one pair of lung. What is present here? One pair of lungs, like this. But do you think these important organs are just present as such? No. They are present in a bony cage like structure. You call it as a rib cage. What do you call it as? Rib cage. So here is present your rib cage. This is your rib cage. All right. So if someone asks you how are lungs protected, these are protected by rib cage. Now, what are the bones that forms your rib cage? One is your sternum. Second is your obviously ribs. And third are your thoracic vertebrae. So these three bones, they form the rib cage. Let's see how. If I talk about this side of the body, this is ventral and this side is dorsal. Dorsal, ventral, lateral. All right. So sides are lateral, this is ventral and this is dorsal. So dorsally I have vertebral column. So vertebral column is made up of small bones known as vertebrae, right? So you have different types of vertebrae. We'll be discussing that in the chapter locomotion and movement. So out of these, the thoracic vertebrae of your vertebral column and laterally the C-shape bones, long bones, ribs are present and ventrally the sternum is present. So we have here sternum, here we have vertebrae and ribs are there which are connecting to sternum as well as the thoracic vertebrae. So if somebody asks thoracic vertebrae, where are they present? They are present dorsally. Ribs are present laterally and sternum is present ventrally, right? And they all are forming the rib cage. It's a cage like structure in which lungs are present. So if the doctor has to perform the open heart surgery or they want the lung to they want to innervate the lung, what do? First of all, they will cut your sternum and then they will move apart this rib cage and then they will go inside if there is a large surgery, major surgery. So every time you have to go inside these organs, you first have to open the rib cage. Fine. All right. So this airtight chamber is thorax, and thorax lungs are present, and in abdomen your all visceral organs are present, like your stomach, your intestine. All these are visceral organs. They are present here. Fine. Okay. Moving further to the next. Let's talk about respiratory passages. So these are the areas from which the air enters into your body. Let's get started. What are these areas? Yes, anyone. What are these areas? From where do you inhale? Take the air in. It going through nose. So we'll talk about nose first. So everything, the story starts from nose. So this is the nose. All right. Okay, this is the nose. The openings of the nose, they are known as nostrils. What do you call them as? Nostrils. Or external nares. So these two openings here, I'm not going to pick it. So these are what? These are your external ears or nostrils. So the entire nose is divided into three parts. How many parts? Three parts. So your nose is divided into how many parts? Three parts or three region. So the lowermost region, it contains hair and oil gland, and this is vestibular region. So this region is vestibular. Upper region is respiratory, and the uppermost one, this one, is olfactory. So yes, your nose have different regions in it. First of all, first of all, when you think about nose, you know inside nose is present some empty space. What do you call it as? You call it as nasal chamber. So your nostrils open into nasal chamber. There are two nasal chamber, we have two nostrils. This nasal chamber, this entire is divided into three region. What it is divided into? Three region. In the vestibular region, what do we have? In the vestibular region, we have small hair. What do we have? Small hair, and here also present the mucus gland. What is present? The mucus gland. All right. So what do we have here, guys? We have hair-like structure, and then we have mucus gland. You know, whenever you catch cold or flu, you get a lot of, mucus coming out, running out of your nose. You call it as a runny nose. So these glands, they get inflamed and they start producing a lot of mucus. That's why you get a runny nose. Fine. And also your nose gets red in that time. What is the function of hair? Both of these mucus and hair, it is trapping the dust particles. So what is the function of vestibular region? It traps dust particles. All right. Now, what is there in the respiratory region? We have three pair of bones here, and these are known as nasal conchae. What do you call them as? Nasal conchae. We have three types of nasal conchae. So, nasal conchae, like I can show you here three because we are seeing the lateral section here. Fine. But if I see the another side of a nose, these three bones are also present. So, there are three pairs. So, this one is superior one, superior, middle, and inferior nasal conchae. They are present in crisscross manner. They are present in crisscross manner like this. Okay. So what's the advantage of this? If anything is present in a crisscross manner, it will increase the surface area. For example, I have this much area. In this area, either I can accommodate this single line of 5 centimeter, or if I have 30 centimeter wire, for example, I have this box, either I can put the wire of 5 centimeter like this, or I can just adjust the 30 centimeter wire in a crisscross manner like this. So here, tell me which of these two wire have more surface area? The one which is of 30 centimeter. This is 5 centimeter. So whenever anything has to increase the surface area, it is present in a crisscross manner, right? So here these are present in which manner? They are present in crisscross manner. As a result, it increases the surface area. So whenever you're increasing the surface area, that means on the bones, there will be more skin. There will be more skin. More the skin, more the blood supply. If there is more blood supply, you can condition the air. For example, whenever the cold air is getting into my nose, whenever the cold air is getting into my nose, it will touch the skin, and my skin has blood supply, and my blood supply has a particular temperature, or just straight away my skin has a temperature of around 37 degrees Celsius, and my cold air is coming from outside. When it will touch the skin, the air will become warm, right? So the function of this area is to warm the air. What it does, it warm the air. Why do you want to warm the air? Do you understand? Due to these bones, your surface area is increasing. Surface area of what? Skin. Because if I have bones in this manner, they will definitely be covered by the skin also. There will be more skin. If there is more skin, then all the air will touch the skin and the air will become warm. Why there is a need to warm the air? Because the cold air is very difficult to get diffused through the membrane, through the lungs, right? Because the air is warm, the particles in the high energy state. So whenever you increase the temperature, the particles gets in the high energy state, and when they are in the high energy state, the molecules are in the high energy state, they can easily diffuse through the membrane. So that's why we need to warm the air. Fine. So here we are warming up the air in the respiratory region. In the vestibular, we are cleansing the air. Vestibular is for cleaning the air. This one is to warm the air. What about olfactory? Olfactory region have olfactory epithelium. This olfactory epithelium, have some sensory cell that help you to smell. So what is its function? It helps to smell. For example, there is, somewhere in the house, someone is cooking Maggie. I love Maggie. I love it. I tell you, I'm a big time fan of Maggie. But and nowadays I'm on diet to just lose some weight. Oh God, please help me. So I am on diet, so I just can't eat Maggie. So whenever I'm teaching, the love for Maggie, it moves out. Like I've told you about smell, the Maggie comes out. So whenever someone is cooking Maggie, so even if it's in the adjacent house, you can smell it, right? Because some chemicals there, they just move into your nose and you can feel it, right? You can smell it. All right. So that's due to this olfactory epithelium. So all the chemicals in anything, for example, someone sprayed the perfume, so that molecules, they will just you come on these olfactory epithelium, and then you can feel them and you can sense them, right? Otherwise we'll be discussing this in detail in the olfactory epithelium in neural control and coordination. There will, again, I will give you the example of Maggie. All right. Okay. So now, so air enters into the nostril. In the nostril, vestibular region will clean it, respiratory will warm it, olfactory will sense it if it is there or something or not. And then ultimately, you will get to see another small opening, and that is internal nares. What is this? Internal nares or internal nostril. So these were external nostril. Now you will come across the internal nostrils. From internal nostril, you will enter into the pharynx, right? Now let's draw pharynx. Okay. Right? So if I talk about pharynx, how does it looks like? So if this is a face of someone, it's not mine. Though the nose appears like my nose, it's a little bigger, but that's not my face, okay? So here you have buccal cavity, and in buccal cavity, you have this area known as palate, right? So palate is dividing your nose portion and your buccal cavity. Fine. So there is a demarcation. So here what we have, you have this palate, and then you have this portion. This is the buccal cavity or oral cavity, in which your food comes, right? So here, right from here to here, this area here to here is your pharynx. What is it? Pharynx. This is also pharynx. This is also pharynx. So if someone asks you what is a pharynx, it's a common chamber for food and air. Because through nose, the air is moving here. Here is a small nostril, internal nostril. And from internal nostril, it is going into the pharynx. Right? So what is the pharynx? It's a common chamber for food and air. Common chamber for food and air. So from here, the food and air, they both enters. From here, the food, and from here, the air. Now this pharynx is opening into a small part, that is the larynx. What is it? It's the larynx. So this is a larynx, and larynx is present on your windpipe or trachea. It is present on trachea or windpipe. So what is larynx? Larynx is your voice box. What is it? Voice box. All right. So let's talk about larynx in detail. Larynx is made up of cartilage. What is made up of? It is made up of cartilage. If this is the larynx, larynx has a small opening. You call it as glottis. What do you call it as? Glottis. This glottis is covered by a flap like structure. Again, this is also cartilaginous. This is your epiglottis. What is this? Epiglottis. All right. So larynx, if this is larynx, right? This larynx has a small opening known as glottis, and this glottis has a covering, epiglottis. It is also made of what? It is also made up of cartilage. Fine. Now what happens is, if I have opening here and here is present the esophagus, I'll draw just here. If this is your neck, this is your trachea. Here is present the esophagus, your food pipe. This is the food pipe. So whenever you are eating something, the food will come from here, like here. Here is your pipe, food pipe. So the nature wants, whenever you are eating, the food should not enter into the trachea here. So nature has given this cartilaginous flap-like structure known as epiglottis. So whenever you eat, this epiglottis covers the glottis so that the food should not enter into your trachea. It should slip into the food pipe. Second thing, whenever you speak, since it is a part of larynx and larynx is a voice box, what is this? This is the larynx. So whenever you speak, the epiglottis moves. Epiglottis moves. So that's why we say never ever talk while eating food. The elder ones in your home or your parents, they always tell you no talking while eating the food. Why? Because when you speak, the epiglottis will open and the glottis is also uncovered, and the food will now enter into your trachea, and then you will keep on coughing, and you will, like, sometime you can even choke as well, right? So here, epiglottis, what is epiglottis? It is made up of cartilage. It is cartilaginous, right? And it covers the glottis, prevent entry of food in trachea. I hope that's pretty clear to everyone, right, guys? Put a star on it, because it's really important for any examination point of view. So that's your larynx and your pharynx. All right. This larynx have small string-like structures. What do you call it as? Vocal cords. So larynx have vocal cords. Larynx have vocal cords that helps you to speak. That helps to speak or produce voice. What is made up of? What it is made up of? Larynx is made up of cartilage. Larynx is cartilaginous. All right, boys and girls, let's move further. So this was all about the pharynx. Let's get started with the very important part, because after larynx, the important structures are there. Let's discuss them. Okay, so we had larynx here. After larynx, what was present? After larynx, the trachea was present. Trachea. And trachea divides into bronchi. Trachea divides into bronchi. So we are not, in a fuzz or hurry. We will take everything step by step. So just follow me. All right, guys. Now, after larynx, what is there? Trachea. Trachea is also known as windpipe. The trachea is covered by incomplete or C-shape cartilaginous ring, right? How long is trachea? It's around 12 centimeter. And what it is covered by? It is covered by C shape like this, cartilaginous like this. So if this is trachea, these type of rings are present. Fine. So here trachea, it is covered by cartilaginous rings. Now, what is the function of cartilaginous ring? These rings, they prevent the collapse of trachea. You know, trachea is small. It's very, delicate, and it's, made up of muscles and skin. When there is entry of air, it can, expand, and when the air moves out, it can collapse. It can move back to its place like this, just like balloon, right? But we don't want it to collapse. We don't want it to get retracted. The reason is, if it gets collapsed, it can actually choke you up. So nature has given us the rings that will make it thick, that will make it thicker, and it will prevent its collapse. So what is the function of these rings? Prevents collapse. How many are there? There are around 16 to 20 rings. How many rings? 16 to 20 rings are present. And these rings are not just present in the trachea, rather, it will move ahead. I told you this is what? This is bronchi. The trachea, it bifurcated into two bronchi. What is this? Primary bronchi. Primary bronchi. Both are primary bronchi. So if someone asks you where exactly your trachea get bifurcated into primary bronchi, you will say at fifth thoracic vertebrae. So at fifth thoracic vertebrae, the trachea bifurcated into two primary bronchi. So from here the respiratory tree starts, right? What is a respiratory tree? Like trees have branches, your entire these small pipes are present like a tree, right? So if I say this is trachea, trachea will bifurcate into bronchi. Bronchi will then open into your bronchioles. Fine. So here is a small set of trees. So I'm writing the names first, then I'll explain you in detail. So here we have trachea. Trachea opens into primary bronchi. Okay. Primary bronchi will then open into secondary bronchi. Then we have secondary bronchi. Fine. Secondary bronchi then open into tertiary bronchi. Tertiary bronchi will then open into initial bronchioles. Initial bronchiole will open into terminal bronchiole. Terminal will open into respiratory bronchiole. Alright. So your cartilaginous rings are present from trachea to initial bronchioles. Where are they present? The rings are present from trachea to initial bronchiole. Right, guys? Okay. If you don't understand these things, if you cannot imagine it, I have something for you. Let me catch it up for you. Give me a moment. Okay. So I have made this myself. I hope you will like it. So that's the respiratory tree. This structure is your trachea, and these yellow are the cartilaginous rings. And then it is dividing into the primary bronchi. You can see here, focus here. These primary bronchi, they're opening into the secondary bronchi, and later on, just like this, the secondary bronchi will open into tertiary, and tertiary will open into what? It will open into the bronchioles, right? You can see it. If you just can't see it, I'm just making it more nearer to the camera. Fine. Okay. So you can also try this at home if you have enough time. If you don't have, you can just use this. Okay. So here, your first question, that is, at which thoracic vertebra the trachea divides to form bronchi? You will say fifth thoracic. So which parts of the respiratory tree have the these cartilaginous ring? You will say from trachea to initial bronchiole. Fine. Okay, moving further, let's talk about the respiratory tree in more detail. Okay, so I have told you, let's write it again. There is no harm in it. So it starts from trachea. From trachea, we have moved to primary bronchi. Why I'm writing this? Because I'm going to explain a very important point here. From primary, we are moving to secondary bronchi. Secondary to tertiary. From tertiary, we then open into what? To the initial bronchioles. If I talk about bronchi and bronchioles, what is the difference? The bronchioles are little thinner than the bronchi. Then we have terminal. Initial means starting and terminal means ending. So these are end bronchiole. The terminal bronchiole then open into respiratory bronchiole, into respiratory bronchiole, right? So I hope you have learnt from trachea to terminal one, because after that some terms will be little new for you guys, right? So let's just remind these first. I'm repeating these first. Trachea, then we have the second primary bronchi, then secondary, then tertiary, then initial bronchiole, then terminal bronchiole, then we have respiratory bronchiole. After respiratory bronchioles, we have another structure which you call it as alveolar ducts. What we have? Because now we are reaching towards a main structure in your lung, that is alveoli. What is it? That is alveoli. So all these structures have entered into the lungs. Where have they entered? They have entered into the lungs. If you can't understand it, just let me make a quick diagram for you. If this was your trachea, trachea opened into primary bronchi. These primary bronchi will then open into, or they will enter into lungs, inside the lungs. Fine? They will open into lungs. So these are your lungs. All right? Okay. So this is how the primary enters into the lungs. So whatever structures we are now talking about, these are all present inside the lungs. Where are they present? All are present inside the lungs. Now these alveolar ducts, they will open into the main structure, the exchange site, which are alveoli. What are they? Alveoli. Now, right from your trachea up to your terminal bronchiole is your conducting part. What is this? The conducting part. Wherever the word conducting comes, that means it is allowing the entry or exit of something. Wherever the word conducting comes, that means it is allowing the entry or exit of something. So all this part is the respiratory part. What's the difference? If I talk about which of the following out of conducting and respiratory, which is allowing the exchange of gases, that's not the conducting, that the respiratory. So respiratory, in respiratory part, there is actual exchange of gases. Why? Because these are very thick and there is no much blood supply. Here it is thin and it has a lot of blood supply, so there is exchange of gases, right? If I talk about conducting part, it starts from your nostrils to your terminal bronchioles. What is the function of this part? This part has a lot of things to do. It clean the air because they have cilia, right? Trachea has cilia. Remember, we have done, there is ciliated epithelium in the trachea, and cilia will allow the particles to move out. It clean the air, it warm the air, it moist the air. So basically, the air conditioning is done by the conducting part, whereas the exchange of gases take place in respiratory part. There is no exchange of gases in conducting. All right. If I talk about alveoli, now what are alveoli? They are grape-like structures. They are what? They are grape-like structures. They are grape-like structure, highly vascular. It has a lot of blood supply. And there is maximum exchange of gases. If someone asks you, The site where there is maximum exchange of gases, you will directly tick alveoli, right? So here is maximum exchange of gas. Maximum exchange of gases. Let's draw the alveoli. All right. So as if now your air has entered from your nose, passing through trachea, bronchi, bronchioles, it has entered into your alveoli. Now, how the alveoli looks like? Alveoli is very thin walled, sac like structure, it's a grape like, which is lined by a simple squamous epithelium. When we have discussed the simple squamous epithelium, I have told you this epithelium is very thin, so it is always associated with diffusion of something, right? And what is happening here? The diffusion of gases. And around this, since it is highly vascular, is present blood vessels. What is present? Blood vessel. And since there is exchange of gases occurring between alveoli and blood, so this will also be lined by simple epithelium. All right. So what is happening? It has a lot of oxygen. So oxygen from the alveoli is entering into the blood, and CO2 from here it is moving out. Fine. This is the exchange of gases. So here it is passing through some membranes, and this become a diffusion membrane. So diffusion membrane is formed between, listen to me very carefully, diffusion membrane is formed between the alveoli. What is this? Alveoli. And what is this? The blood vessel. Okay. So what are the layers? So what are these layers that are forming diffusion membrane? There are 3 layers. How many layers? 3 layers. Okay. So gases, if they have to move from alveoli to blood, they have to pass through 3 layers. What are these layers? First, the simple epithelium of alveoli. Second, the endothelium. Now, what is this? This is the endothelium. What is endothelium? The simple squamous of blood vessel. So wherever you find the word epithelium, boys and girls, it is straight away the simple squamous epithelium of blood vessel, right? In between them is present the basement membrane. Because you know it very well, no epithelium can survive without a basement membrane. So this is a basement membrane. This is a basement membrane. So whenever air has to move in or move out, it has to pass through these membrane. So if this is the external air, it has to enter the blood. First it has to pass through the alveoli membrane, which is a simple squamous, then basement membrane, then the alveoli of your blood vessel. So what are these 3 layers which are forming diffusion membrane? Simple squamous epithelium of alveoli, basement membrane between these layers, and endothelium. All right. And this basement membrane is very thin, because you can't make it thick. If it is thick, it will be very difficult for the exchange of gases. Now let's talk about other cells of your alveoli. Apart from this, the alveoli has another cells, 2 type of cell. Let's talk about them. One are your type 2 alveolar cells, and another are your dust cells. Dust cells are macrophages. What are these? Macrophages. What is the function of macrophage? These are immune cells that will undergo phagocytosis, and it will, engulf the microbe or any bad thing that comes there, and it will eat it. So it's a kind of immune cell that provides protection. Whereas type 2 alveolar cell, it secretes lecithin. Lecithin, as we have discussed in biomolecule, it's a phospholipid. It prevents the collapse of alveoli. Prevents collapse of alveoli. For example, for example, you open a packet of balloon and you find that the balloons are, collapsed. They are just sticky. The both surfaces, they stick together. What if I add some drops of oil? Now they're not sticky, they can slip around like this, right? So this is a function of lecithin. It will not allow the alveoli to collapse. And what is a lecithin? It's a phospholipid. So do remember it. Phospholipid, this is a phospholipid lecithin secreted by type 2 alveolar cells of alveoli. Then what are type 1 cells? These simple squamous are type 1s, right? So here this is a lumen of alveoli. From here the air enter, the oxygen and CO2 will get exchanged. Through which membrane? The diffusion membrane. Moving to the external structure of lungs. All right. So before that, let's talk about the alveolar, this respiratory tree. We have discussed the respiratory tree. I have, I bought this diagram just for you so that you can see actually how the respiratory tree looks like. So here you can see this is a conducting zone, which from where we have this trachea. This is trachea. Trachea open into main bronchi. Main bronchi is a primary bronchi. Singular is bronchus. It opens into secondary bronchus, then tertiary, then terminal ones. Then this was a conducting zone. There was no exchange of gases. Then this one opens into the respiratory bronchiole, then into alveoli. You know, alveoli, what is the difference between this alveolar sac and alveolar duct and alveoli? All right. So what is alveolar sac? What is alveoli and what is alveolar duct? You must have eaten grapes in your life, right? So that grapes, the entire bunch of grape is your alveolar sac. One grape is alveoli and small stems that are attached are alveolar ducts. I hope that's understood, right? Simple. So that entire bunch is a sac. Small grapes are alveoli, and that small stem attached to it is the alveolar duct. All right. So do remember this, and this is a part of your alveolar, respiratory zone, in which actual exchange of gases take place. Now let's moving further to the external structure. Here. So this is the lung. This is how it looks like. This is trachea. Trachea open into primary bronchi. What it is open into? Primary bronchi. Primary bronchi enter into lung. This one is your left lung. And this one is your right lung. If you can see, the right lung is broader, left lung is thinner but longer, right? And this is the diaphragm, muscular flap. The left lung is longer and this one is shorter because here we have liver on the right side. So due to presence of liver, the right lung is little smaller, not the longer. But this one is thinner due to heart. This center space between the lung is known as mediastinum space. What is mediastinum space? It's the space between the lungs. In this space is present your heart. And heart is, as you know, is little tilted towards the left side. Heart, you know what is the exact location of heart? We say left, it is on the left side. No. If this is the heart, it is present just in the center, but tilted towards the left. Right? That's why we say the major portion is on the left side. So we say heart is on the left side. So while you were in the mother's womb, you were developing, you were embryo. So heart needs to be accommodated here. We need some space for heart. So the lungs develop accordingly. So lungs, due to heart, they formed a depression. If I have this structure and this is heart. Now heart is pushing this structure. This structure will form a depression, right? Somehow this structure will form a depression. So this depression is known as cardiac notch. Call it as cardiac notch. So this depression on the lung is known as cardiac. Fine. So this is depression on the left lung to accommodate the heart. But otherwise, heart is present in between the lungs in the center. That's a medium sternum space. Your lungs are covered by double membranes like this. There is a reason why lung is covered by a double membrane, to protect it. One protection was given by the rib cage, other protection is given by this double membrane bag-like structure known as pleura. Pleura is double membrane, it has two membranes. And what is its function? Protection. Let's talk about this double membrane pleura in detail. Let's talk about it in detail. So pleura is something which is known as peritoneum. What is a peritoneum? First of all, peritoneum is double layer membrane around the organ. If this is the organ, organs have double membrane coverings known as pleura. So if this is the body wall, this is a body wall, this is your body, this is a body wall. Okay, for example, this is my lung, this is my body wall, this one. So one layer is present towards the body wall. This one is your parietal peritoneum, or it's the parietal layer. Whereas the one which is present towards the organ, this is a visceral layer. Inside there is a cavity filled with fluid. Filled with fluid. There is a cavity. It has fluid. This peritoneum is present around your major organs, like your heart, like your lungs, like your intestine. But the name in different organs is different. So this peritoneum is a double membrane bag-like structure. Its function is protection. So I will call it as serosa if it is in my intestine or gut, entire gut. I will call it as pleura if it is in lungs. I will call it as pericardium if it is in heart, right? So peritoneum is a structure, double layered structure, which is present on your vital organs like your serosa, pleura, heart, or pericardium in the heart, right? Its one layer is towards the organ, that's the visceral layer. Then the one which is present towards body wall, this is body wall. It is parietal layer. Inside it is a cavity with a fluid. So if I'm talking about pleura, the fluid will be pleural fluid, right? If it is the heart, it is a pericardial fluid. All right. So in the intestine, it is single layered. It is not double layered. Anyways, so here this has a fluid that provides protection because it does the shock absorption. All right. Okay. It's just like whenever you order a parcel, if something is fragile like your glass or ceramicware, usually the company used to pack it in a bubble wrap or newspaper. That will give you a protection that will absorb the shock and it will not let them break. Just like that, your pleura is performing this function. Okay, so that's it about your structure. Let's do some question. First, all statements are correct except first. During swallowing, glottis can be covered by a thin elastic cartilaginous flap called epiglottis. Second, pharynx, a portion of which is the common passage for food and air. Third, the lungs are situated in the thoracic chamber, which is anatomically an airtight chamber. Fourth, rib cage is formed by sternum and lumbar vertebra. Solve it. Hurry up. First statement says, first of all, what you have to find? The correct except. It is saying all are correct, leaving one statement. So you have to find the incorrect one. First is saying whenever you swallow the food, when you eat the food, the epiglottis covered the glottis. Right? So glottis is opening, covered by epiglottis. True. Pharynx is common chamber for food and air. True. Lungs are situated in a thoracic chamber, which is anatomically and airtight. True. Thorax is area. The inside chamber is a thoracic chamber. Rib cage is formed by sternum. True. But which vertebra? Thoracic. and also the rims. So answer is next. Trachea is a straight tube extending up to the mid-thoracic cavity, which divides at the level of fifth thoracic, third thoracic, five lumbar, fifth cervical. Very simple. Where do the trachea divides? It divides at fifth thoracic vertebra into primary bronchi. We have drawn this, right? So it's a primary bronchi. So you sometimes also write primary as one node, right? This is trachea. So answer is 1, fifth thoracic vertebra. Right? Next. The inner pleural membrane is in contact with. Now the question of pleura. So I have told you there are two layers, the inner and the outer. Inner one is also known as visceral layer. So visceral one is in contact with the organ. So that means lung surface. But parietal or outer layer is in close contact with the body wall. So answer is 1. Next. Match the following column 1 and 2. Column 1 and 2 you have to just do match the following. These all are respiratory organs. Gills. Fish, flatworms, aves and earthworm. Yes. Gills are present in fishes. Lungs. Lungs are present in aves. Simple diffusion occurs in flatworms and cutaneous occur in earthworm. Very simple. Next. Dash have a network of tubes, tracheal tube to transport atmospheric air within the body. Which of the following animals had the tracheal tube? You don't even have to read the options if you have learnt it properly. Tracheal tubes are also present in the cockroach, and cockroach belongs to insecta. Answer is 2. Right? So these are the type of questions, these one. They fall into the category of 2 chapter, animal kingdom as well as respiration one. So make sure to learn them very properly. Alright, so moving further to respiration. So we are now talking about the physiology. We have done the anatomy, we have done how the organs look like. Now it's time to move and see how the things work. So let's talk about the various steps of respiration. So respiration involves these following steps. First step is breathing or pulmonary ventilation, by which atmospheric air is drawn in and CO2 rich alveolar air is released out. So what this first step says, it says that first of all, you in the entire process of respiration, the very first step is your breathing. In breathing, you take in the fresh air and you exhale out the foul air. Now the next step is diffusion of gases across the alveolar membrane. So now this air is a mixture of a lot of gases. So the gases which are very important for us is O2 and CO2. We need to take in the oxygen and we need to exhale out the CO2. So the air has entered into your lungs alveoli, and that process is breathing. From that alveoli, now oxygen and CO2, they are going to get exchanged, and the exchange will take place through diffusion through which membrane? The alveolar membrane. Yes, the one which we have discussed in the alveoli. Now what will happen? There will be transport of gases by the blood. So whatever oxygen is going to enter from the alveoli, it will now enter into your blood. From blood, it will be transported to your various tissues, right? So here, after transportation, where these gases are going, these are going to the tissues through blood, right? So in the tissues, there is diffusion of O2 and CO2. The tissues are producing CO2 by combustion of glucose, right? The tissues, they have glucose, they are taking up the oxygen. Now the oxidation will take place and that CO2 is produced. Now the CO2 will move back into the blood, and from the blood, the tissues are taking oxygen. Utilization of oxygen by the cells for catabolic reactions and resultant release of O2, the CO2 that we have discussed. Now, what is happening? That oxygen is entering into the tissue. Tissues are using O2. They are producing CO2. CO2 will move back into the blood. From the blood, it will be transported back to the alveoli, and there it will move out from your lungs. These all processes are very important in this chapter. We are going to discuss all these 5 processes in detail here, right? So this was just a crux of how the respiration and breathing process takes place. So since the first process is breathing or pulmonary ventilation, let's talk about it. So you must have heard of the word ventilation. What is ventilation? Whenever you have heard it, let's open the door or the window for the ventilation. Ventilation is just, entry of the fresh air and moving out of the foul air. Similarly, the ventilation of lungs is pulmonary ventilation, and it is also known as breathing in case of human or any other animals, and it consists of two steps. First, wherein you are taking in the fresh air, you will call it as inspiration, and where you are exhaling out the foul air, that is expiration. We also use some other terms for it. One is inhalation. So inspiration is also known as inhalation, whereas expiration is also known as exhalation. Right? So what happened in the inspiration? The entry of fresh air or oxygen rich air into the lungs. Into the lungs. So what is exhalation or expiration? It is the exhaling or moving out the foul air. What is the foul air? The CO2 rich air. From the lungs. From the lungs. Right? So, as we have discussed the definition, let's move toward how this process takes place. Let's talk about the physiology of it. So, for understanding this, we need to understand some muscles that are associated with this process. And before that, you should know how the air moves. You know what we are doing? We are moving the air. For example, if this is your alveoli, from alveoli, the CO2 rich air is moving out, that is exhalation. And here, the oxygen rich air is moving in, which is inhalation. So there must be a force or some criteria by which these are entering, or there is the air is moving out. It's not just like normal process. You just can't say it's moving in and moving out. There must be a reason behind this. Now what is this reason? It's a very simple reason that you must have heard of the blood moves from high pressure to low pressure. Similarly, the air also moves from area of high pressure to area of low pressure. So you know how these inhalation and exhalation take place? With the help of difference in the partial pressure, right? So I say if this is the lungs, the partial pressure of oxygen is 0 outside, and here the partial pressure of oxygen is -3. Now I will say here the pressure is more and here the pressure is less. So as a rule, the air move from high pressure to low pressure. Now what will take place? Inhalation or exhalation? Yes. What should take place? If I say the air move from high pressure to low pressure, if I say the atmospheric pressure of oxygen is 0 and in the alveoli it's -3, that means it is more, it is less. So the air move from high pressure to low pressure, that means what will take place? Inhalation will take place. Fine. If the reverse takes place, this is alveoli and here it is, +3 and outside it is 0. Now this one is higher and this one is lower, and I say the air move from high pressure to low pressure, the air will move out, and this is what this is what happened during exhalation. Fine. So read this line: the movement of air in and out of the lung is carried out by creating a pressure gradient between the lungs and the atmosphere. If this is the atmosphere and this is the lungs, there is a difference in partial pressure which you call it as gradient. So that gradient is created by the body, so that a pressure gradient is maintained and air move from high pressure to low pressure. Now what is a thing? And or I can say how the body maintain this pressure gradient. I told you that your body is changing its partial pressure or pressure, right? If I say this is the partial pressure of oxygen, what is the partial pressure? The pressure of individual gas in a mixture of gases that you also study in chemistry. If I say here the everything is constant, but only thing that changes is the partial pressure of the gases inside your lung. So that means your body is changing this partial pressure. Now, how the body changes this partial pressure? In chemistry, you must have learned a law, that is the Boyle's law, which says the pressure is inversely proportional to volume. If I'm going to increase the volume, definitely the pressure is going to reduce. If I'm increasing the pressure, the volume will reduce, because it's the inversely proportional relationship. If somehow, if somehow, with the help of muscles, I can reduce the volume of air by squeezing the um lungs. If I say with the help of muscles, I can reduce the volume of the lungs. I repeat, if I say with the help of muscle, I can reduce the volume of lungs. How I am reducing the volume of lungs by squeezing the muscle. So definitely inside the lung, the pressure will increase. Fine. Why? Because according to this law, if you decrease the volume, the pressure will increase. If the pressure will increase, the air will move from high pressure to low pressure. Similarly, if by using the muscles, I expand my lungs, the volume will increase, the pressure will decrease, and air move from high pressure to low pressure. So this is what takes place during inspiration and expiration. So what is happening here is, as I've told you, the air move from high pressure to low pressure. Fine. If I say here the air is entering in because there is less pressure inside the lungs. So how the less pressure inside the lung has been maintained? Yes, by increasing the volume. So this process is inhalation. So what are you doing in inhalation? You are creating a pressure gradient, that is a pressure difference between the atmosphere and lungs. How? By increasing the volume. So when you increase the volume, there is a decrease in pressure. So the inverse thing will take place during exhalation. Now what is this? This is exhalation. So what is happening during exhalation? What are we doing? We are decreasing the volume. As a result, the pressure inside the lungs will increase, and hence the air will move from high pressure to low pressure, in this case outside. Fine. So this is happened during exhalation and inspiration or inhalation. Now, what are the muscles and how does this mechanism of increase and decrease in volume takes place? So we are going to talk about that now. All right. So first we'll talk about inhalation or inspiration. In inhalation or inspiration, there are two muscles which are responsible. How many muscles? Two muscles. All right. Two muscles are responsible for inspiration. First is diaphragm and another is external intercostal muscle. All right, let's discuss the muscles first. Your rib cage is made by thoracic vertebrae and your sternum, and here by the ribs, and this is how your rib cage is formed. We have already discussed it in the previous topic. So in between the ribs are present two sets of muscle. One are present internally and another are present externally. The one which are present internally, they are known as the internal intercostal muscles. Why you call it as intercostal? Intercostal is a space between the ribs, right? So it's internal intercostal muscle. And then we have the muscle which is external intercostal. Fine. Another muscle is a diaphragm muscle which is present here. Diaphragm is actually a flap of the muscles, or it's a muscular flap. It's a diaphragm. It is also known as phrenic muscle. Fine. So the muscles that plays a very important role in inspiration, these are these two muscles. These are the muscles of inspiration. If anyone asks you which are the muscles of inspiration, you will say the phrenic muscles or the diaphragm muscles or the external intercostal muscles. So this was your ribs. This is your ribs. This is your sternum. And what is this? This is your thoracic vertebrae, your vertebral column. So this is your rib cage, right? So whenever the phrenic muscle is going to contract, you know how your phrenic muscles are present. If this is your rib cage, if this is your entire rib cage, the phrenic muscles are present just here. This is rib cage and this is your phrenic muscle. So whenever your phrenic muscle is going to contract, it is going to move downward. And this is how it will look like. So if you compare the volume of the rib cage in both the cases, you will find out the volume of this is more. So whenever the phrenic muscle contracts, the diaphragm gets flattened because it's normally in a resting position, the diaphragm is curved. When you contract the diaphragm muscle, it gets flattened. As a result, it increases the volume of your thoracic cavity, right? So this is what I have called it as a rib cage, and rib cage is present in a cavity of thorax, that is the thoracic cavity. So whenever diaphragm is moving downward, it is going to increase the volume of thoracic cavity. And whenever the volume is increased, the pressure decreases, and what will take place? The air will move inside. So what will happen when the diaphragm muscle contract? The muscle contract, diaphragm flattens. Volume of thoracic cavity increases, pressure decreases. Air moves in. Fine. Now let's talk about external intercostal muscle. So whenever this muscle is going to contract, it is going to put your entire rib cage upward and outward. So whenever the rib cage is moving upward and outward, the volume of thoracic cavity increase, pressure decrease, air will move in. Right? Just like, just if you want to experience it, try to take in the air forcefully. You will see your thoracic or your chest is going to move outward or upward, right? So what is happening here when this muscle contract? Rib cage moves outward and upward, and everything will be same. What is same? This process. Now this will take place. All right, both same here. The volume of thoracic cavity increases, pressure decreases, air will move in. Now what will happen during expiration? During expiration, two type of muscles are playing a very important role. One are the internal intercostal, and another is your this abdominal muscle. So we have two type of expiration. One expiration is normal expiration. One is normal, and another is forceful. Another is forceful. So normal expiration takes place by the relaxation of the muscles of inspiration. So here what is happening? The muscles are contracting during inspiration. So if all these muscle gets relaxed, everything will go back to its original position and nothing will happen, right? That means the volume will definitely get reduced, the pressure will increase and air will move out. So the reverse is taking place during normal expiration. So during normal expiration, the muscles of inspiration relax. So when these muscles relax, rib cage moves back to original position. Original position. What will happen now? The volume decreases, pressure increases, air moves out. All right. Now, what about these muscles? These muscles are involved whenever you are, respiring forcefully. Now, where are internal intercostal muscles? We have already seen this. It is present in between the ribs. Whenever these muscles contract, it will work opposite to external intercostal. External intercostal was moving your ribcage upward and outward. This will move inward and downward. As a result, the opposite will take place. The volume will decrease, pressure will increase, air will move out. So let's see what will happen when they contract. Ribcage moves inward and downward. Now what will happen? The volume decreases, pressure increases, air moves out. Now what are these abdominal muscles? So as we have drawn a thoracic cavity, this is a diaphragm. Whatever is present above it is a thoracic cavity and below is the abdomen. In the abdomen, a lot of muscles are present. What these muscles they do, they will contract and they will move all the viscera present in your abdomen to the upward direction. What is a viscera? Your intestine and stomach present. So whenever this abdominal muscle will contract, they will push all the stomach, intestine and all the glandular structure present here towards the upward direction. So as a result, this will put a lot of force on the diaphragm and this diaphragm becomes more arched. And when it becomes more arched, you can compare both of them. This was when it was present normally, right? And this is when you are contracting your abdominal muscle and the diaphragm becoming arched. So if you compare these two cavities, thoracic cavity, which one is having more volume? The first one. So when the abdominal muscle contract, they are pushing the diaphragm upwards. As a result, the volume of thoracic cavity, it decreases. The pressure will increase and the air will move out. So what happened here? These muscle will contract, pushes viscera towards diaphragm. Diaphragm will become more arched. Diaphragm becomes more arched. Now what will happen? The volume decreases, pressure increases, air moves out. I hope you understood this all concept. It's quite simple. If you understand this concept, everything will be easier for you. You know, in inspiration, the external intercostal and the diaphragm muscles both are contracting and both are doing the same thing. That is, they're increasing the volume. Because you know, when the volume gets increased, the pressure decrease and air move from high pressure to low pressure. So here during exhalation, whatever inspiration muscles have contracted, they have to relax and everything go back to its normal position. As a result, the pressure will increase due to decrease in volume and the air will move out. So whenever you have to throw out more air, then what you have to do, you have to put extra efforts. You have to make other muscles contract, and which are your internal intercostals and your abdominal muscles. Fine. Okay, so this was about the process of breathing or the pulmonary ventilation. So on an average, a healthy human breathes 12 to 16 times per minute. You have to remember this. So what's on an average a healthy human breathe, or how many breath you take or you takes in, you know, per minute, or you say the rate of your breathing is 16 times per minute. So the volume of air involved in breathing movements can be estimated by using a spirometer, which helps in clinical assessment of pulmonary function. So if you have to see what amount of air you are taking in or out, or how much is present in your lungs or whatsoever, you use an instrument, and that is spirometer. So this is a mini type of a spirometer, digital spirometer, and this machine let you know the volume of air in or out of your lungs. Fine. So um, if I say on an average, human breathe around 12 to 16 times per minute, right? So what will it will be? It will be the rate of breathing. Fine. Okay. So if someone asks you which instrument help you to estimate the volume of air involved in breathing movements, then what will you say? You will say it's a spirometer. All right. Let's move further and talk about pulmonary volumes and capacities. Now, what are these pulmonary volumes and capacity? So, let's talk about them. So, what is a volume? It's the amount of air you take in or you take out. So, what's the pulmonary volume? All right. Volume of air taken in or out. Now, what is capacity? Total volume of air. Total volume of air. When you add these pulmonary volume, that becomes capacity. All right. So, what is pulmonary volume? It's the amount of air you take in or take out, and capacity when you add these all. So, let's talk about what type of pulmonary volumes and airs do you have. First of all, we'll talk about your normal breathing. Whenever you are just breathing normally, like you are doing it right now, at that time you're taking in 500 ml of air and you're also exhaling out 500 ml of air, and that is your tidal volume. The volume of air you take in or out during normal respiration. You're not forcing yourself, you're just breathing like the way you breathe. But whenever you're forcing yourself and you do forceful inspiration, like at this time, I am taking in the 500 ml usual, which occurs or which enters during normal breathing. Apart from this, I'm also taking the extra air inside by extra efforts. That is your inspiratory reserve volume. So whenever I am, respiring so forcefully, like at this time, I'm also taking the tidal volume and I'm also taking the extra volume. That extra volume is inspiratory reserve volume. So when I sum up these two, that becomes your inspiratory capacity. What is it? That is inspiratory capacity. All right. So whenever I am doing forceful inhalation, at that time, the total volume of air that is going inside my lung is inspiratory capacity. So that is a sum of my tidal volume and the extra which is coming, inspiratory reserve volume. So it is formed by the combination of TV plus IRV. So one thing is, what type of question can appear in the examination? First is, they can directly give you the definition. Second, they can give you match the following, in which they can give you the volume. Like tidal volume is 500 ml and the extra which is coming during forceful inspiration is 2500 to 3000 ml. Or the another one is inspiratory capacity. Again, the match the following. Inspiratory capacity is formed of tidal volume plus IRV. Now, if there is a definition type of question, you may get confused by the definition, what volume extra, because it's literally confusing. But you, when get deep down into it, it's quite easier. So for that, you need to know the breathing, right? You need to know some little yoga. Like if I say I am forcefully inspiring, I'm taking two volume of air. One is tidal volume, another is extra, that is IRV. So the sum total is inspiratory capacity. Fine. So total volume I'm taking is inspiratory capacity, which comprise of the normal one and the extra one. So the definition of capacity will always start from total volume of air or the maximum volume. Right? It will always start from total volume of the air or the maximum volume. So what will be its definition? Total volume of air, total volume of air inhaled during forceful inhalation. During forceful inhalation. So, like we have forceful inhalation, we also have forceful exhalation. So, while I'm exhaling forcefully, like this, right? So, during this time, I am also taking out the normal volume of air and also the extra one. The extra one is expiratory reserve volume, and this sum will be known as the expiratory capacity. Now, what is expiratory capacity? Expiratory capacity. Now, expiratory capacity is formed of tidal volume plus ERV. Again, as I've told you, this is a capacity, so it will also start from total volume. So, it's the total volume of air exhaled during forceful exhalation. Fine. Now, Whenever you are expiring forcefully, I have given my all effort and I'm expiring forcefully. At that time, my tidal volume has, it's exhaling. My tidal volume also moves out from my lung, and also the expiratory reserve volume. Still, some of the air remains in the lung, and that is your residual volume. Even after I expire by all the efforts I can make, even after that, the small amount of air get remains in your lung, and that is residual volume. The volume of air remain in the lung even after forceful expiration is your residual volume. So now listen to me very carefully, and let's discuss a very important thing, that is functional residual capacity. Functional residual capacity, which is formed by the combination of ERV and residual volume. Functional residual capacity. Functional residual capacity. All right. Okay. So if I say this is your lung, if this is your lung, I say there is some amount of air that will always remain in the lung, that is residual volume. Even if you put extra effort, no matter what you put extra efforts, this will remain in the lungs, right? So whenever you are expiring normally, what are you expiring? You're only expiring tidal volume. So whenever you are expiring normally, what will move out of your lung? Tidal volume. Fine. So what is remain in the lung? ERV plus RV. So whenever you expiring forcefully, two volume of air moves out of your lung, tidal volume and ERV. That is expiratory capacity. So expiratory capacity is TV plus ERV. So this occurs, this amount of air moves out when you are when you are expiring forcefully. But when you are expiring normally, the only amount of air that is moving out is tidal volume. So whatever remains in the lung is your functional residual capacity, right? So what is functional residual capacity? It is formed by the combination of ERV plus residual volume. It says it's the total amount of air remains in the lungs when we respire normally, right? So you may get confused between functional residual capacity and residual volume. Residual volume is when you are expiring forcefully, the one that remains in the lung, and functional residual capacity is the total present in the lung when you are respiring normally. You're not putting any extra effort. Fine? Okay. Moving further to the another capacities. All right. So this was the capacity when you were just expiring forcefully. All right. Sorry, inspiring forcefully. And this was the capacity when you were only expiring forcefully. What if you inspire and expire forcefully both together? Like in this case, I was inhaling forcefully. In this case, I was exhaling forcefully. What if I am having both? I'm doing yoga and I'm having both. At that time, the volume of air that you are respiring is a vital capacity. So, vital capacity is formed by the combination of all these three. Vital capacity, it consists of the ERV plus TV plus IRV. So this say it is the total volume of air you inhale when you expire forcefully, or total volume of air you expire when you inhaled forcefully. You got it? Total volume of air expired when you inhaled forcefully, or total volume of air inhaled when you expire forcefully. Fine. So total volume of air inhaled, total volume of total volume of air inhaled when we expire forcefully. or vice versa. That means any of the thing can take place, because here you are, what you are doing, you are expiring and respiring forcefully. So whenever the word total volume came, it means total volume of air inhaled. It tells that a person is respiring. That means a person is inspiring forcefully. And this, it has already mentioned, the person is expiring forcefully. So when you inspire and expire forcefully, that means you're talking about tidal volume, ERV, and IRV. If I write the definition in another way, which I have written vice versa, let's just don't write vice versa and write the entire definition. Total volume of air exhaled when we inspire forcefully. So now what this definition is telling you, it is telling you total volume of air exhaled. Total volume of air exhaled. That means it is telling you about expiratory capacity. When you inspire forcefully, that means it is talking about IRV. So in any way, these two definition, they tell you about the vital capacity. Now what is TLC? So when you add all these, that is total lung capacity. What is total lung capacity? RV plus ERV plus TV plus IRV. Or you can also write these ERV, TV plus IRV as vital capacity. So it becomes residual volume plus vital capacity as well. Fine. So what is total lung capacity? When you inhale forcefully, at that time you are taking in extra air, which is IRV plus TV. And ERV is already present in your lungs and residual volume always remain in the lung. So when you inspire forcefully, whatever air is present inside your lungs, whatever air is present inside your lungs, that is your total lung capacity. Fine. So if I am inspiring forcefully, what is present in my lung is TLC. Whenever I'm inspiring forcefully, what I am taking in the lung is inspiratory capacity. Fine. I hope that's pretty clear to everyone. That's a pulmonary volume and capacities. All right, guys. Let's do some question. During inspiration, the volume of thoracic cavity increases because of, it is saying whenever you inhale the air in, the volume of thoracic cavity increases. Why? Contraction of diaphragm and external intercostal muscle, because there is, contraction of diaphragm and internal intercostal muscle. Second, relaxation of diaphragm and external intercostal, contraction of diaphragm and relaxation of external intercostal, relaxation of diaphragm and contraction of external intercostal muscle. First of all, it's inspiration. Definitely the muscles are going to contract. So just delete all those which contains relaxation. All right. So if you know one thing, the muscles are contracting, the simple answer is 1. But if you want to know the exact answer with the deeper knowledge, you also know that we have studied during inspiration, diaphragm and external intercostal muscle contracts, whereas internal intercostal muscle contracts during forceful exhalation. Next. Additional volume of air a person can inspire by a forcible inspiration is IRV, ERV, IC, EC. Alright, so now the question is saying additional volume of air a person can inspire by forceful inspiration. First of all, how you are inspiring forcefully. Right? So it is talking about additional or extra volume. Additional means extra. It is not talking about total, so in a way it will not be a capacity. So it will not be expiratory capacity, it will not be inspiratory capacity. Since the person is inspiring, it will not be expiratory reserve volume, it will be IRV. So extra volume you're taking in is IRV. I hope that's pretty clear to everyone. Next. Read the following statement and find the incorrect one. First, conducting part is the site of actual diffusion of O2 and CO2 between blood and atmospheric air. The trachea, primary and secondary and tertiary bronchi and initial bronchioles are supported by incomplete cartilaginous ring. The movement of air in and out of the lung is carried out by creating a pressure gradient between the lungs and the atmosphere. The volume of air involved in breathing movements can be estimated by using a spirometer. So you have to find the incorrect one. The first one says, in conducting part is the site of actual diffusion of oxygen and CO2 between blood and atmospheric air. That is not a conducting part, that is a respiratory part. So first is the incorrect answer. So this is a question from your respiratory tree, which says the entire respiratory tree consists of two parts. One is conducting, another is respiratory. In respiratory part, there is exchange of gases. One answer will be one. Others are all correct. Next, match the following. Now, this is the pulmonary volumes and capacity one question. IRV. Now, you have to, match the following with respect to the amount of them or the volume of them. You know what is IRV? IRV was 2500 to 3000. So, these things you have to mug up or you have to learn yourself. ERV is expiratory reserve volume. RV is residual volume, and TV is your tidal volume. So here TV is very simple. It's 500 ml. All right. And what is your reserve volume, residual volume? It is 1100 to 1200, and ERV is 1000 to 1100 ml. Fine. So this is how you have to do the match the following. Next question. A healthy man can inspire or expire approximately dash of air per minute. Now here comes the topic which I really want to discuss with you. That is the minute ventilation. So is the concept of minute ventilation. If I say the respiratory rate of a person is 16 breaths per minute, that we have already discussed, and we say normally the person breathes around 500 ml of air, right? This is tidal volume. So how much volume of air you are taking in or out in 1 minute? And that is your minute ventilation. So formula is tidal volume into number of breath per minute. That is your minute ventilation. So how much are you taking in? 500 into number of breath, that's 16. Okay, so if I'm taking the 16 as all, so what will be your answer? You have to find that out yourself. Yes, I'm giving you some time. So actually, this number of breath, it varies. It varies from 12 to 16. Okay, it varies from 12 to 16. So somewhere you will find it 13, 14, 15, 16. So whenever you get the question of minute ventilation, they're generally asking you about the volume of air or the minute ventilation. You will multiply it with 12, not 16, but you will multiply it with 12. So that will be 500 into 12, approximately 6 liter per minute. Okay, so there is always a bracket of 12 to 16. But sometime they play with you, and they give you the number of breath they wanted you to find out the minute ventilation of. Fine. So whenever the general question is there, you will just use the 12 as the number of breath per minute. Otherwise, they can give you the number of breath they want to. Fine. So according to that, what will be the answer? If I say according to 12 is 6 liter per minute. Okay, now they have given you the bracket. So according to that, if 6 liter per minute is the answer of the 12 one, that means 6000 ml. And if I multiplied it with the 16, it will be 8000 ml. So what will be the answer? The answer will be third. All right. So this is how you can find out the minute ventilation. That means number of breath per minute into tidal volume, or the volume of air inhaled or exhaled per minute. What is the definition of minute ventilation? Volume of air exhaled or inhaled per minute. I hope that's pretty clear to everyone. Yes? Okay. Let's talk about how do the gaseous exchange takes place. So let's talk about the exchange of gases. So what gases are going to get exchanged? One is O2, another is CO2. So if this is the alveoli or alveolus is singular. From alveolus, CO2 is going inside the blood vessel, and from blood, CO2 is moving out, right? This is simple, the exchange of gases. So the exchange take place at two places. One is, as I've told you, between alveoli and the blood capillary, and the second exchange takes place between the blood vessel and your tissues. So there are two changes are taking place. Here, the CO2 is moving inside the blood, and oxygen is moving inside the tissues. But in the alveoli, the exchange is taking place where the oxygen is entering into the blood and CO2 is moving out of the blood. Here, the CO2 is moving inside the blood, and here the CO2 is moving outside the blood. All right. So here, whatever exchange take place, it takes place only by simple diffusion. How? By simple diffusion. Again, as I've told you, the gases move from area of high pressure to low pressure. So whatever exchange is taking place, the only reason behind this is the pressure gradient. Like there in breathing, we have discussed the gases move from area of high pressure to low pressure. Similarly, the gases exchange also take place by the area of high partial pressure to low partial pressure. Now, what is this partial pressure? Whenever we are writing this pressure, we use a capital P. Whenever you are writing the partial pressure, you write the small t. And we say air move from high partial pressure to low partial pressure. What is P? Capital P is the pressure of the air. If this is the air, its pressure will be P. If I say this air is made up of oxygen, CO2, nitrogen, the partial pressure is the pressure of this individual gas. Alright. So when I'm talking about the partial pressure, it belongs to only individual gas. When I'm talking about the capital P, it belongs to the entire air. Alright. So let's talk about it. What are the factors that on which your exchange of gases take place? Obviously, there must be some factors. That's why it's not happening, or some other factors. If they changes, the partial pressure will change, and the exchange will not take place, or the exchange of gases will be more. So these are certain factors. First is difference in the partial pressure. So more the difference, more is the exchange. More is the exchange. For example, there is a change of 0 and -3 in one condition, and another there is a change of 0 to -6. Fine. So here we have partial pressure of oxygen 0, and to the another place we have -3, and here we have 0 and -6. So what do you think? Where is the more exchange of gases will take place? Obviously, where the difference is more. 0 to 6 is -6, 0 to 3 is -3. So here more exchange will take place, because in both the cases, if you compare both the cases, the difference is more there. Solubility in lipids. Any gas which can easily solubilize in lipids can easily pass through the alveolar membrane. Since diffusion membrane is made up of cells only, right? Endothelium or the squamous epithelium of alveoli. And the cells, they have a membrane, cell membrane made up of phospholipid. So whenever the gas has to, pass through the cell, it has to move across the plasma membrane, and the plasma membrane is made up of lipids. So here any gas which is friends with the lipids, which can easily solubilize in the lipid, it can easily pass through it. The one which is not friend with the lipids, it can not easily pass through it. So here more the solubility in lipids, more the exchange. So if I compare oxygen and CO2, the CO2 is more soluble, right? CO2 is more soluble, or it has higher solubility in lipids. So that's why the exchange of CO2 is around 25 times more. It is around 25 times more than the oxygen. Alright, so how much more? 25 times more than oxygen. Next is thickness of diffusion membrane. If the diffusion membrane is thicker, so the gases will not exchange more. So that then we will say there will be less exchange. If I have something very thick, the gases cannot easily pass through it. If it is very thin, the more rapid exchange will take place. Surface area. If I say I have a lot of alveoli, the more exchange will take place. If I say I have only one alveoli, the less exchange will take place. So more the surface area, more the exchange. So these are some of the factors on which the exchange of gases, it depends. All right. I hope that's pretty clear to everyone. So let's see how the exchange of gases takes place. As I've told you, it depends upon the partial pressure. If this diagram is clear, quite good. If it is not clear, just open your NCRT and see it. So here is written very important thing that you need to remember. the partial pressure of oxygen and CO2 in the different parts of your body. First of all, let's talk about the air, atmospheric air. The partial pressure of oxygen in the atmospheric air is 159, in the alveoli 104, in the deoxygenated blood 40, and the oxygenated blood 95, and in the tissues 40. Similarly, the partial pressure of CO2 is given in all these regions. So for that, first I'll make you understand the process of double circulation. This is your heart. In heart, we have two sides. One side is the right side, and another side is the left side. The left side always carries oxygenated blood, and the right heart always carries deoxygenated. Now, what happened here is these are your body tissues in which the respiration is taking place. This is your alveoli from where you are taking in the oxygen. In the tissues, you are giving the oxygen. All right. So, when you give the oxygen to the tissues will produce CO2. Now, what is happening when the tissues produce CO2? The CO2 will enter into your blood. And whenever the blood contains a lot amount of CO2, you call that blood as deoxygenated. So whenever we are talking about deoxygenated blood, it will be having more CO2. And whenever we are talking about oxygenated blood, it will be having more oxygen. So when a tissue undergo respiration, it will use up the oxygen which is coming from these blood vessel, right? Which blood vessel is this? Systemic arteries. So systemic arteries is bringing the oxygenated blood towards the tissues. Tissues will use the oxygen, they will respire and give back the CO2. Now this blood will carry a lot of CO2. It has given the oxygen. It will lack oxygen, but it will be having a lot of CO2. Now this will become deoxygenated. Now this deoxygenated blood will enter into your right side of the heart, and then it will enter into your lungs. Why? Because this blood is deoxygenated. So it needs to give out the CO2 to the alveoli, so that alveoli will throw it out. And now since it is deoxygenated, it will take in the oxygen. Okay. So here, all right. So here, the blood vessel that is taking the blood from the tissue and giving to the heart is systemic veins. So likewise, systemic arteries carries oxygenated blood. The systemic veins carries deoxygenated blood. Now from this heart, through pulmonary artery, the deoxygenated blood is going towards the alveoli to give away the CO2 and to take the oxygen. After it has taken the oxygen, now blood will become oxygenated. It has given the CO2 to alveoli. Now the blood will become oxygenated. Through pulmonary vein, it will enter into left heart, and through systemic artery, it will enter into your tissues. And this is double circulation, and this will go on and on in your body. So one question is that you need to understand pulmonary vein and pulmonary artery, what kind of blood they carrying. Since you all know vein carries deoxygenated blood and arteries carries oxygenated, but these are exceptions. This carries deoxygenated blood because this is the entire right side, and this carries oxygenated blood. Likewise, systemic arteries carries oxygenated, veins carries deoxygenated. Alright, now talking about alveoli. In the atmospheric air, first we'll just focus on O2, the exchange of O2, oxygen. In the atmosphere, we have 159 partial pressure of oxygen. 159 mm of mercury. Mm of mercury is the unit of pressure. Okay, partial pressure. In the atmosphere, we have the partial pressure of oxygen, that is 159. And in the alveoli, you have 104. And we say that the air or the gases, they move from high partial pressure to low partial pressure. Since oxygen is rich in the air, in the atmospheric air, so it will move inside the alveoli. Now, we have to exchange. I told you there are two sides of exchange of gases. One between alveoli and blood vessel. Second side is between blood vessel and tissues. So here, what is happening? The oxygen is entering into the blood and CO2 has been taken away. Since we are talking about oxygen, since alveoli has the partial pressure of 104, whereas the blood coming here, which is the blood in the pulmonary artery, which is deoxygenated, it will be carrying 40 mm of mercury. So from atmospheric air, from high to low, the air will move into the alveoli. Now let's compare between alveoli and deoxygenated blood. Again, it will move from alveoli to deoxygenated blood. High to low, just simple as that. So here the partial pressure of oxygen is 40 and here it is 104 because you have to compare with this one. Fine. So as the partial pressure of oxygen is higher here and lower here, the oxygen will move in. Let's talk about CO2. If I talk about CO2 in atmosphere, the CO2 in atmosphere is 0.3 mm of mercury, whereas the CO2 in the alveoli is 40. Now you know that 40 is greater and 0.3 is low. So from alveoli, the CO2 will move outside and that is into the air. Again, the partial pressure of CO2 in deoxygenated blood is 45 mm of mercury and in the alveoli it is 40. So you have to compare these two. So if I say this is higher, this is lower, what will happen? The air or the CO2 will move inside the alveoli. So in the deoxygenated blood it was 45, so that's why it moved from high to low in the alveoli, and in alveoli it was much higher than the atmosphere, so again it will move from alveoli to the atmosphere. Similarly, if I write the oxygenated blood's partial pressure of oxygen is 95 and whereas the CO2 is 40. Now let's compare between oxygenated blood and tissues. Now the second site of exchange. Now what happened here is in the oxygen we have a partial pressure of 95, whereas in tissues what do we have? We have 40. Okay, let's compare here. So these are of of the oxygen. So it's already written here. I have written it twice, so don't worry about that. So here these are the partial pressure of tissue and this is the partial pressure of your oxygenated blood. So here the partial pressure of oxygen is more. Let's just erase this one then if it's not required. The partial pressure of oxygen is 95 in oxygenated blood, whereas in tissues it's 40. So you better know from oxygenated blood the oxygen will move inside the tissues now. Now compare these one. In tissues we have partial pressure of 45 and here in oxygenated blood the partial pressure of CO2 is 40. Now what will happen? Since it has higher PCO2 level, it will move from tissues into the oxygenated blood. Now the blood will become deoxygenated and it will be carrying the partial pressure of oxygen that is 40 and CO2 as 45. It's quite simple. You just need to remember all this. If you remember all this, after that, you just need to remember the air move from high partial pressure to low partial pressure. Alright, as simple as that. So it's quite simple, do not get confused, and then accordingly see the partial pressure value and move the oxygen or CO2 accordingly. Alright, so this is how the exchange of gases takes place with the help of pressure gradient. Alright, moving further to next, and that is transport of gases. So here we are going to understand how the oxygen and CO2 now gets transported. As we have already discussed the exchange, and as exchanges giving the oxygen and taking in the CO2 or vice versa. An exchange was taking place here and here due to change in the partial pressure. Now, as this blood is transporting the gases, that means it is acting as a vehicle where you have loaded like a truck where have you loaded all your products. Now it is moving from one state to another, right? So let's talk about that truck, or let's talk about that transport of your gases. Since we have two gases here, one is oxygen, another is CO2. Now how do they travel inside the blood? 3% of oxygen is dissolved in the plasma and 97 binds with hemoglobin. What is plasma? You have your body fluid, which is blood. So when you remove all the cell portion of the blood, when you remove all the cell portion of the blood, whatever remains behind is your plasma. So what is plasma? Blood minus corpuscles. What is corpuscle? Cells like red blood cell, white blood cell. That is your plasma. So since plasma has a water base, so oxygen gets dissolved in that, and how much of the oxygen moves in that form? Only 3%. And 97% binds with hemoglobin. What is this hemoglobin? It's a pigment respiratory pigment in RBC. Respiratory pigment in RBC. If I talk about hemoglobin, it is formed of two components. One is heme and another is globin. The heme portion contains iron. What does it contain? Iron. Whereas the globin is formed of chains of amino acid. It is formed of polypeptide chains. Polypeptide is the chain of amino acid, as we have discussed in the biomolecule. There are around 2 alpha chain and 2 beta chains. So this is the structure of your hemoglobin. Okay, we have also discussed that in the your biomolecules part. So whenever the hemoglobin binds to oxygen, it forms the oxyhemoglobin, which is reversible in nature. What is from oxyhemoglobin? So where does it binds? Here. So oxygen binds to the iron portion, right? One iron binds to one oxygen. If I say there are total 4 iron, so how many O2 molecules will be there? Around 4. So 4 iron will bind to 4 oxygen. 1 iron will bind to 1 oxygen. So in one hemoglobin can carry how many oxygen? 4 oxygen. 4 O2. Fine. Now, not oxygen atom. If I talk about CO2, 7% in the dissolved form in plasma, 20 to 25% binds with hemoglobin. Now, so whenever CO2 binds to hemoglobin, it also forms a reversible complex, that is carbaminohemoglobin. Now, why it is not known as carboxyhemoglobin? Because it binds to globin part. So CO2 binds here in this portion. CO2 binds to the globin part. Alright? Okay. And 70% in the form of bicarbonate ions. How does it form? When H2O binds to CO2, it will form an acid, which is carbonic acid. This carbonic acid will then dissociate into, yes, HCO3 negative plus H positive ions. Alright? And this is a bicarbonate. What do you call it as? This is the bicarbonate. And this process takes place in the presence of an enzyme, which is carbonic anhydrase, which is Ca. What is Ca? Ca is carbonic anhydrase. We have also discussed this in biomolecules. So this enzyme catalyzes. Alright. So you have to remember what percentage is carried in which form. 3% of oxygen in dissolved form in plasma, 97% with hemoglobin. And here carbon dioxide 7%, 20 to 25 and 70. Maximum bicarbonate ion, minimum plasma 20 to 25% with the hemoglobin. Alright, moving further to the next. Let's talk about the transport of oxygen. If I say a healthy individual have 15 gram of hemoglobin, how much? A healthy individual has 15 gram of hemoglobin per 100 ml of blood. Per 100 ml of blood. Okay. So you must have heard of whenever a person undergoes blood test, you say, I have 8 gram. 8 gram is so less. Some have 12, 13, 14, 15 gram. 15 is maximum gram of hemoglobin. So that value is not of the entire body, rather it's per 100 ml. So you have a lot of this pigment, which is hemoglobin, and this also provides the red color to your blood. And I say 1 gram of hemoglobin binds to 1.34 ml of oxygen. As we have discussed, the one hemoglobin carries 4 molecules of oxygen. So when you when you want to get a data in the form of mLs, that is 1.34 ml. So how much 15 gram of hemoglobin will be carrying the oxygen? It is approximately how many ml of oxygen? Yes, it will be approximately, when you multiply it, it will be 20 ml. 20 ml of oxygen per 100 ml of which blood now? oxygenated blood, right? Why oxygenated blood? Because now, as if we are assuming this 15 gram is carrying the oxygen. So if 15 gram hemoglobin is present and 15 gram is carrying oxygen, the blood will definitely becomes the oxygenated. Now, if I say you have 20 ml of oxygen in 100 ml of oxygenated blood, so how much amount you are giving to tissues and how much becomes a part of deoxygenated blood, right? For example, we are discussing here, we are on this portion where we are saying this oxygenated blood, 100 ml of this is carrying 20 ml of carrying 20 ml of oxygen, right? So here the 100 ml blood which is carrying 20 ml of oxygen, how much is it is giving to the tissues and how much gets back to the deoxygenated blood? This is what we are going to discuss. All right, so if I say the person is at rest, and another thing is the person must be doing some exercise, both will be different scenarios. So when a person is having rest, it will not use a lot of oxygen, right? It will not use a lot of oxygen. At that time, tissues are not doing anything. The person is at rest. It will not require a lot of oxygen. So 5 ml of oxygen from this 20 ml will go into the tissues. Another 15 ml will become the part of your deoxygenated blood. So when a person is at rest, their 20 ml is coming. Out of this 20 ml, 5 ml will be given to tissues and 15 ml will move here. So this tells us that even deoxygenated blood contains the oxygen. The reverse will take place when a person is doing exercise. When a person is doing exercise, that is the point where the tissues are working so much. The tissues are working so much. So tissues will be required more oxygen. So 15 ml of oxygen will go to the tissues and 5 ml will become the part of your deoxygenated blood. So this is how the distribution goes according to the needs of a body. And here there can be another reason. When a person is exercising, it will also be producing a lot of CO2, and it will also be consuming a lot of oxygen. As a result, the partial pressure of oxygen will be more lower in the tissues and it is higher in the blood. So from high to low, more the partial pressure difference, more the gases will move in. Fine. Okay. Moving further to the next, to the oxygen dissociation curve, which is a very, very important topic. So, what is oxygen dissociation curve? This is a curve which tells you about the relationship of your partial pressure of oxygen and percent saturation of hemoglobin. What is percent saturation of hemoglobin? Saturation means complete filling. That means how much oxygen has been bound to your hemoglobin, how much oxygen your hemoglobin is carrying. Fine. So if I have at this side partial pressure of oxygen and I have some hemoglobin. What I have some hemoglobin. Like I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6. I have 6 hemoglobin. Now I am going to increase the partial pressure of oxygen. I increase the partial pressure of oxygen and here the binding starts. I increase the partial pressure of oxygen. Now the binding start. There is a point where 50%, since they are 6, the 50% hemoglobin are filled. The 50% hemoglobin are filled. And that point is, yes, you can see here 50% has been filled around at 25. At 25 mm of mercury of partial pressure of oxygen. Can you see that? Yes. Can you see that? So the point or the partial pressure of oxygen where 50% of hemoglobin has been saturated, that is your P50 value. What is P50 value? Partial pressure of oxygen at which 50% hemoglobin is saturated. Right? Now, I increase the partial pressure of oxygen to more. I increase it more. Now there will be a point where around more than 90% hemoglobin is saturated or complete saturation of hemoglobin take place. Here the entire hemoglobin, these are hemoglobin. hemoglobin is saturated, right? Entire is saturated. Now the time will come, whatever oxygen you are giving, or if even if you increase the partial pressure of oxygen, this graph will go to stationary, just like we have done that in biomolecule, the graph of Vmax and the substrate concentration. So here, when you increase the partial pressure of oxygen, the saturation of oxygen with hemoglobin will increase. But when the entire hemoglobin is filled, or 100% saturation will take place, the stationary graph will move on, right? Why? Because there is no more hemoglobin left for the oxygen. So the curve that you get here in oxygen dissociation is your sigmoid curve. Which curve is this? Sigmoid curve. So this curve can be shifted to right side or left side depending upon the conditions of your body. For an instance, if someone is exercising, that means it is using a lot of oxygen, so the partial pressure of oxygen in the blood will decrease. If my tissues are taking all the oxygen from my blood because they are doing something, like in this case, right? If I compare both the cases, here the tissues are taking more oxygen from my blood, so my blood will be having less level of oxygen. Fine. So in that case, what will happen, my body wants to have more oxygen from outside, so as a result we need more partial pressure of oxygen to get my hemoglobin saturated. Otherwise, I will give you more example by which it will get pretty clear to you. I say, if I have more pressure of CO2 in my body, if I have more pressure of carbon dioxide in my body, now what will happen? If I have more partial pressure of CO2 in my body, CO2 will bind to water. Water will then form acid. Acid will form bicarbonate ion and H positive ion. Now what happen is, when there is increase in H positive concentration, both the things go simultaneously. Whenever you are exercising, your PCO2 level will increase. Also, your H positive ion will also increase. At this point, this H positive or hydrogen ion, they are enemy of oxyhemoglobin. They are enemy of oxyhemoglobin. They will bind to it and they will cause the dissociation of oxygen, right? So here what we are saying, we are talking about saturation of hemoglobin, or oxygen with hemoglobin. Okay, so whenever there is increase in PCO2 level or increase in H positive ion, what will happen? The oxygen will break away from the hemoglobin. As a result, you need to increase the army of oxygen. When you increase the army of oxygen, the HBH will get dissociated and HbO2 will again be formed. But the condition is, you have to increase the partial pressure of oxygen. So while doing it, definitely you will get a curve. While doing it, definitely you will get a curve, but you will get a curve when there is more increase of PO2. So the when at 25 in normal condition, the hemoglobin was 50% saturated. Now at more oxygen concentration, the 50% saturation will take place. As a result, the P50 value is shifting. As you can see here, it's the P50 value of the another one. The P50 value is increasing. So whenever the graph is shifting towards the right side, now which side is this? This is the right side. The P50 value will increase. Why P50 value will increase? Because here the conditions has been formed as such that you need to have more partial pressure of oxygen. So when there is more PCO2 or there is more H positive ion, you need to have more oxygen, because all the thing PCO2 and H positive are doing is they want to destroy the relationship of hemoglobin and oxygen. Imagine hemoglobin and oxygen are two lovers, and CO2 and H positive ion, they're villain. All they are doing is they want to set them apart. But now, what is the another force you need to increase the army of oxygen so that the H positive ion will actually move away and they will again reunite. But by doing that, you are increasing the P50 value. What is the P50 value? The partial pressure of oxygen where 50% is saturated. Now, what are the other factors that can, move your graph to the right side? So, right side occurs whenever you are doing some vigorous exercise or something like that. Apart from this, one reason was of the right shift was increase in partial pressure of CO2. Another was increase in H positive ion concentration. What can be the another factors? Other factors are increase in temperature and increase in BPG. What is BPG? Biphosphoglycerate. Whenever there is increase in temperature, this leads to denaturation of proteins. What is denaturation? Breakage. Denaturation of protein of or polypeptide of hemoglobin. So if globin gets dissociated, the entire structure of hemoglobin will distort and no more oxygen can join to it. So that's why whenever there is increase in temperature, the denaturation will take place. What about BPG? What is a BPG? It's the intermediate product of glycolysis. You must have heard of glycolysis. Glycolysis is the breakage of glucose to give you energy. So in between the it's a 10-step process. At the fifth step, the BPG is formed. So if there is more BPG, this will bind to hemoglobin and this destroys the hemoglobin structure. So whatever is destroying the structure of hemoglobin, that will lead to dissociation of oxyhemoglobin, and as a result you need to have more oxygen simultaneously, so that whatsoever hemoglobin is left, they will bind to more oxygen, and hence doing that P50 value will increase. If previously in a normal condition it was getting saturated at 25 mm of mercury, now it will may be saturated at 50 or 60 or so. So that's why there is a shift of right side. Okay, if there is a right shift, there must be a left shift as well. So this is a right shift. What about the left one? What will happen during the left shift? Let's see. During left shift, there are certain conditions which are favorable for formation of oxyhemoglobin. So in right shift, what are the conditions we have? If there is increase in PCO2, increase in H positive ion, increase in temperature, or increase in BPG, all these will cause right shift. All these favors breakage of oxyhemoglobin or dissociation of oxyhemoglobin. Okay, so these all are villains. They want to destroy the oxyhemoglobin. As a result, you need to put more effort, increase P50. But when all the conditions are good, that will cause left shift. If the opposite to this take place, it's shift, not side. Maybe I have written this side incorrectly. The shift. So what will happen during the left shift? As here the P50 is increasing, here there is decrease in P50. As you can see here, now the 50% saturation take place at around like 15 only. Fine. So this occurs when there is increase in partial pressure of oxygen, decrease in PCO2, right? Decrease in H positive ion, decrease in temperature, and there is decrease in BPG. So you need to understand all these factors and how do they affect your dissociation of oxyhemoglobin. All right. Okay, so this was about the oxygen dissociation curve. Let's talk about the CO2. So every 100 ml of deoxygenated blood delivers approximately 4 ml of CO2 in the alveoli. So if I have this alveoli and this is the deoxygenated blood. Okay. So if I say the 100 ml of this blood is giving 4 ml of CO2, right? So this is what the sentence say. Like we have discussed how much ml of oxygen is delivered to the tissues. Likewise, how much CO2 are you giving to the alveoli? How much do we give? The every 100 ml of deoxygenated blood, it gives 4 ml of CO2 in the alveoli. All right, remember this for the lifetime. It's also mentioned in the NCRT. All right, guys. Moving further to the next part, which is the how the transport takes place, or during exchange or at the site of exchange, how CO2 and oxygen, they get transport. So let's talk about them in a molecular way. All right, let's get started. If I say, if I say you have these structure known as tissues here. This is the endothelium. Endothelium is simple squamous epithelium of blood vessel. And this is your RBC. What is this? This is RBC. You know that, you know that at tissues, the respiration takes place and CO2 is formed. So whatsoever CO2 this is forming, some part of it uh, will go dissolve form in the plasma. If this is a blood, this entire is plasma, right? And this structure is RBC. Fine. So around 7% of CO2 is transported in the dissolved form in plasma. 20 to 25% bind to hemoglobin and form carbaminohemoglobin, and the 70% it it reacts with water in the presence of carbonic anhydrase and form carbonic acid, which later on forms bicarbonate ions and H positive, right? So here, if I say this is a situation of this situation, here the oxygenated blood is going to the tissues. The tissues is producing CO2. Now into this the CO2 is transporting. So this we are zooming in and we are making it here. Okay. So if I say this blood is oxygenated, it is coming from here, from the alveoli. This is oxygenated blood. This oxygenated blood definitely will be carrying oxyhemoglobin. As if now it has reached the tissues, the CO2 will come here, the 70% of which will form H positive ion. These H positive ions will now react with it because it's the enemy of it, and now will lead to the dissociation of oxyhemoglobin, and hence this oxygen will be released and enter into the tissues. Okay, so this is how whatever oxygen is coming inside the RBC in the form of oxyhemoglobin, it gets transported in the tissue. So from this, what we understand that whenever there is increase in partial pressure of CO2, because tissue was respiring, there is formation of CO2, it leads to the transport of oxygen, and this is what is Bohr's effect. What is it? Bohr's effect. So according to Bohr's effect, whenever there is increase in partial pressure of CO2, this leads to the transport of oxygen. Now this has become this RBC has given all the oxygen, taken up the CO2. Now whatever this blood has become now is deoxygenated blood. Now this deoxygenated blood, it will enter into the alveoli. It will move towards the alveoli. Again in the alveoli, we have this epithelium and now this RBC. So this RBC here is carrying some stuff. What is it? First, it has formed HbCO2. HbCO2. Second, it has formed HBH. It has formed this. So these two products has been formed here. One is HBH and another is HbCO2. Now this HbCO2, when it will see a lot of oxygen near the alveoli, you know in alveoli there is high partial pressure of oxygen. So when it will see a lot of oxygen here, there is increase in partial pressure of oxygen near the alveoli. Due to this, the oxygen will fight with carbaminohemoglobin, and what will it form? It will form HbO2, and CO2 will be released in the alveoli. Again, there is increase in partial pressure of oxygen. Now, oxygen will again fight with this, and it will form HbO2 and H positive ion. Fine. Now, in this, if you have seen, the H positive form will bind to HbO2 and lead to the transport of oxygen. Now, what about this HCO3? This HCO3, it contains the charge. So you just can't, keep this charge inside the RBC. So what happened here is, as soon as it is formed, an H positive ion binds with this, the HCO3 moves out of the RBC, and in place of HCO3 negative, chloride ion enters. So HCO3 negative moves in the plasma, and here it react with like K positive ion and act as a buffer. What is a buffer? The one that maintains pH. Because there is no need of these ions here, because the charge will then get disturbed. But when here near the alveoli, when these H positive ions are formed, now they will search, they are alone, they will search of their another partner, that is HCO3 negative. So to balance H positive ion, these HCO3 negative will move inside. The reverse will take place. So this effect where HCO3 negative is moving out, because now it is alone, H positive has bind to the hemoglobin. This effect is known as Hamburger's phenomenon or chloride shift. What is this? Chloride shift or Hamburger's phenomenon. Right? Now at this point, what will happen? Reverse of chloride shift. What is reverse of chloride shift? HCO3 negative is moving in and chloride ion is moving out. What is a chloride shift? Chloride shift is Hamburger's phenomenon. Okay. Now this HCO3 negative will bind with this H positive and reverse will take place. H2CO3 and then water plus CO2, and this CO2 will be transported back. So from here, what do you understand? You understand whenever there is increase in PO2, it leads to unloading or transport of CO2, right? So here CO2 is moving inside the alveoli when there is increase in partial pressure of oxygen, and there is transport of CO2, which is your Haldane's effect, which is the Haldane's. All right, so this is how the oxygen and CO2 gets transported and exchanged. All right, I hope you understood this. Let's talk about the regulation of respiration. So regulation takes place by two means. One is the chemical receptors and another is through neural means. Let's talk about neural first. Whenever there is a neural regulation, make sure there will be a center in the brain. Like if I say the neural regulation of vomiting, it takes place with the help of a control center in the brain, that is medulla, right? Similarly, in the brain we have the respiratory rhythm center. What do we have? We have a respiratory rhythm center. We have respiratory rhythm center, right? So like I've told you, the respiratory in the brain we have a center, have a we have a center for your vomiting. Similarly, we have the centers for the breathing. So respiratory rhythm center is one center which is present in the medulla. Where it is present? It is in the medulla. This is the first center. In medulla, it helps in normal inspiration. It helps in normal inspiration. Like whatever you are doing right now, it is all under the control of medulla. You are breathing in, you are breathing out. For how much time you will inspire, for how much time you will expire. It is all under the control of medulla. Second, you have the pneumotaxic center. Pneumotaxic center. Pneumotaxic center is in the pons. It's also a part of your brain. It's the switch off center. So it doesn't mean it will switch off your respiration. Rather, increase increase the rate of respiration. So whenever you are breathing heavily, you're breathing fast while running, you will see you're not breathing deep at that time. You are breathing shallow but very fast. Fine. Whenever you're breathing deep, like the duration is more, right? But the rate is less. What is rate? Number of breaths per minute. Whenever you are running and breathing heavily, then there are more breaths per minute, but at that time the breath is shallow, not deep. So here pneumotaxic center is increasing the rate of respiration, and it is increasing the rate of respiration by giving signal to the respiratory rhythm center. Control center will always be remain this, but it will only tell the medulla to do so. Fine. Next, we have chemoreceptor. Chemoreceptors are of two types. One are central. These are present in medulla. And another are your peripheral chemoreceptor. These peripheral chemoreceptors, they are present in your blood vessels. Peripheral are present in your aorta and carotid artery. Aorta, you all understand what is aorta? The one that is carrying the oxygenated blood from the left ventricle. Like we had pulmonary artery in the right ventricle, and in left we have aorta. So all these are carrying some chemical receptor. Now what are chemicals to be detected here? We have three things. One is CO2, another is H positive ion, another is oxygen. So one gas is CO2, another is oxygen, and H positive ion is formed by reaction of CO2 with the water. So you need to tell your body about the concentration of all these three. Out of all these three, your chemical receptor can only detect CO2 and H positive ion, not the oxygen. Why? Because 97% of this is saturated with oxyhemoglobin. So the one which is saturated with the oxyhemoglobin, your chemoreceptors cannot detect them. They can only detect the CO2 and H positive ions. They will detect all these. For example, I'm exercising. There will be increase in CO2 and H positive ion. My graph will move to the right shift, right? So at that point, chemoreceptor will detect, oh, Diksha is running. CO2 is more, and this is very bad. So these receptor will tell my respiratory rhythm center increase the rate of respiration, or they will tell the pneumotaxic center there is a need to increase the rate of respiration, and now they will tell to medulla that increase the rate of respiration, because whenever you run you breathe heavily. That's why you breathe heavily, right? So this is how they regulate your respiration. All right, moving further to the disorders. First is asthma. So asthma is a kind of disorder of the upper respiratory tract. What happened here is it's actually an allergy or hypersensitivity, and this allergy or hypersensitivity is from dust. From dust. Okay. What happened here is whenever a person inhales a lot of dust, its bronchi and bronchioles get inflamed. You can see here the bronchi, bronchioles of asthmatic patient and here of a normal person. Whenever it gets inflamed, the muscles of bronchioles, because in bronchiole wall there are certain smooth muscle, these muscle will contract and the lumen will get constricted. You can see the lumen there. There is more wide lumen. Lumen is the center cavity where the air will move, and here the lumen is very narrow. As a result, there will be difficulty in breathing, and person will try to breathe, and there is a production of a sound, and you call it as a wheezing sound. So here difficulty in breathing, and it will only affect your upper respiratory tract. Effect on upper respiratory tract like bronchi and bronchiole. Fine. Next, what do we have? Next disorder is your emphysema. Now, what is emphysema? This occurs due to cigarette smoking or sometimes heavy pollutants, but mostly mostly due to cigarette smoking. This one affects lower respiratory tract. Lower respiratory tract usually consists of your respiratory zone, like your alveoli. So you can see here is a lung of a person of infected, highly infected person with emphysema, and this is a normal lung. So whenever a person do a lot of smoking, the chemicals inside them, it breaks all the walls of alveoli. So if there is breakage of alveoli wall, there will be no exchange of gases as well. So this is what the cigarette smoke gets deposit, and the color of the lungs become black. So this occurs due to heavy smoking, and it affects the lower respiratory tract. Next, occupational respiratory disorders. These are the disorder that occurs to a person due to its occupation, or they get it from workplace. They the disorders a person gets from its workplace. Like if a person is working in a glass factory without any equipments, right? Whenever glass gets cut, a lot of fibers they get dispersed in the air, and these fiber they contain silica, and that gets into the bronchi of a person and causes silicosis. What is it? Silicosis. Silicosis occurs due to silica. If a person is working into a factory where asbestos sheets are made, what are asbestos sheets? You must have seen a thick plastic like sheets people used to use to cover their sheds or to make sheds, so that no sun should enter into their house, right? So that green color sheets are made up of asbestos, and they can also cause the occupational respiratory disorder, and the disorder will be asbestosis, right? So here you have also seen some people working in the coal mines. They can also get a black lung disease, wherein the coal gets deposit into their lungs. So it can also occur due to coal, and that is black lung disease. So one common thing that you will see in this disorder is fibrosis. What is fibrosis? There is a breakage of the walls of bronchi, and that leads to the overproduction of fibers in them. As a result, the bronchioles will become stiff, and they will not be able to expand, and they will not be they will lose their elasticity thing. And if your bronchioles they lose the elasticity, so whenever the air enters in, it will move out, it will remain to its original position, and that's what fibrosis is. What happened in fibrosis? Damage of respiratory tract. Fibers formed, and loss of elasticity. All right. So these are three respiratory disorder which are given in the NCRT. Also here, if you can see here in the emphysema, the same thing takes place, because there is a effect on the lower respiratory tract, and this one, as if I told you, it consists of a respiratory zone. So here, what one thing that will happen is decrease in surface area for exchange of gas. Fine. So in the asthma, what was happening? In asthma, it was an allergy wherein which affect the upper respiratory tract, and there is difficulty in breathing. In the emphysema, it was due to cigarette smoking, and it affects the lower respiratory tract. And in this, there was less exchange area is there, because it is affecting your alveoli as well. In the occupational one, your bronchi and bronchioles are damaged, fibrosis takes place, and there is difficulty in breathing. And this occurs due to person's exposure to these substances at their workplace. Apart from this, there are certain other disorder like pneumonia. What happened in pneumonia? Pneumonia can be bacterial, it can be viral, right? What happened in pneumonia is, if I'm talking about bacteria, it can be due to diplococcus. If it is viral, a lot of viral organism can cause you the pneumonia, or some protozoans even can cause the pneumonia. What happen in pneumonia is, if I have this alveoli, the wall of alveoli will get inflamed. If the bacteria enters here and it cause inflammation of these wall, there will be overproduction of the mucus, plus there will be holes formed here. As a result, the interstitial fluid will enter into the lumen. Now this lumen is containing a lot of mucus plus interstitial fluid. This lumen is supposed to be empty. Why? Because here the air will come, the gases will come, and the exchange will take place. What is this? This is alveoli. In alveoli lumen, there should be no fluid. If there is a fluid, the gases will not be there, or the gases will be difficult to be here. Or you can say, if there are fluid, no exchange of gases can take place. So as a result, there is no exchange of gases. If there are no exchange of gases, that means the person's blood will be carrying more CO2 and less oxygen will enter. And as a result, there will be increase in partial pressure of oxygen in blood. And whenever there is increase in partial pressure, increase in CO2 in your blood, you call this condition as cyanosis. Cyano means blue. Wherever the word cyano comes, that means blue. And that is a symptom of your pneumonia, that a person's lips will become blue. Why? Because there is more CO2 in blood now, no exchange is taking place, no exchange of gases is taking place here, as I've written already, right? So the person's CO2 is more in blood, the blood will appear blue. Also the fingernails will also appear blue. That's a symptom of pneumonia. So why pneumonia takes place? Due to inflammation, there is increase in mucus and interstitial fluid in the lumen, and as a result, no exchange of gases takes place. All right. Next is carbon monoxide poisoning. When CO2 binds to hemoglobin, that's your carbaminohemoglobin. When hemoglobin binds to carbon monoxide, it is your carboxyhemoglobin. If I'm saying it's carboxy, that means it will definitely binds to iron of hemoglobin, and it will compete to oxygen. As comparison to oxygen, its affinity with the hemoglobin is 200 times more. How much? 200 times more. 200 times more affinity than oxygen. This is a gas which is formed during combustion of fossil fuels, right? So if there is a lot of pollution in certain area, there will be more carbon monoxide and it will bind to the hemoglobin, and this can lead to the serious disorder. Why? Because what do we want? We want oxygen. We don't want CO. We don't want carbon monoxide. We want oxygen. If the carbon monoxide content is more in the air, it will bind to the hemoglobin. Now no oxygen can bind, and it can lead to, suffocation, and a person can even die. Fine. So this is carbon monoxide poisoning. Next is atelectasis. What is atelectasis? It is obstruction in air passages. So when can a person face this condition? Atelectasis is actually a condition more than a disorder. When I've told you that this alveoli gets damaged in the emphysema. So when the alveoli gets damaged, the wall of lower respiratory tracts get damaged. If the wall is damaged, it can, squeeze in, right? If I'm saying this is the bronchi or respiratory bronchiole. What is this? Respiratory bronchiole. If the respiratory bronchioles get damaged, the elasticity will be loss of elasticity. And now when the air will move out, so the bronchioles will get contracted like this. So if the bronchiole is normal and it has the elasticity, when the air will enter, they will expand. But when the air moves out, they get squeezed. If I say this bronchiole is damaged, when the air will move, it will expand. But when it moves out, if it get squeezed, it will remain in that position only. So due to the cigarette smoking, when your respiratory bronchioles got damaged, there becomes the obstruction. There comes the obstruction, and that obstruction is known as atelectasis. So atelectasis is a condition where there is obstruction in the air passages. Example, when does it occur? It occurs in emphysema. Fine. Okay. Moving further to the next, that is a mountain sickness. So here, most of people who have visited Ladakh ever, or into very high altitude region, they must have suffered from dizziness or vomiting or something like that. So in mountain sickness, whenever there is high altitude, there is high altitude. At high altitude, there is less partial pressure of oxygen. If there is less partial pressure of oxygen outside, how it is going to enter inside? Because we say in atmospheric air, the partial pressure of oxygen is 159 and inside around 104 in the alveoli. If it fall less than 104, is it going to enter in your lungs? No. So this is how there will be no exchange, no oxygen will enter, and there will be less oxygen in the body, more cyanosis, and people will feel dizziness, vomiting, and it can even lead to serious threats as well. So this is what mountain sickness is. What is it? Mountain sickness. So what happen in mountain sickness? More the altitude, less the partial pressure of oxygen in air, no exchange of oxygen, which will lead to dizziness, vomiting, fatigue, etc. So that's why whenever you go to so much high altitude, it is suggested that you should take care for 1 or 2 days. Later on, your body gets acclimatized to that environment. So how does body gets acclimatized? So you must have felt something if you have ever visited these places. The cheeks get redder in these areas. Why? So it's a method of your body to get acclimatized to these areas. How it gets acclimatized? It will increase the RBC count. So the body gets acclimatized. Acclimatize means adapted by increasing RBC. More the RBC, more the oxygen transport, and your body will adapt and you will enjoy there. All right. Next is questions. Nearly dash percent of CO2 is transported by RBC, whereas dash percent of it is carried as bicarbonate ion. So by RBC around 20 to 25% and carbonate ion 70%. So what will be the answer? Answer will be 1. Simple, straightforward question. Next. The chronic respiratory disorder due to heavy smoking in which the alveolar walls are damaged. Alveolar walls means it's a lower respiratory tract. And first of all, this thing clarifies everything. Heavy smoking, and that's not asthma, that's not bronchitis, that is not pneumonia, that's emphysema. Answer is 4. Asthma is allergy, bronchitis can occur due to pollutants, pneumonia occurs due to bacterial or viral infection, whereas emphysema is due to cigarette smoking. Next. Every 100 ml of deoxygenated blood delivers approximately dash of CO2 to the alveoli. Straightforward question again. 4 ml. I've told you how much CO2 is given to the alveoli by deoxygenated blood. 4 ml. Right? Okay. Next. Lack of pulmonary surfactant can cause. Okay. So as we have discussed, one cause of atelectasis was emphysema. The another can be the lack of lecithin. Remember lecithin? We have discussed surfactant. What is a surfactant? That decreases surface tension. What is lecithin? Lecithin is a phospholipid. We have discussed it prevents the collapse of alveoli, right? It is secreted by type 2 alveolar cell. So this surfactant, why you call it as a surfactant? Because it decreases surface tension. More the surface tension, more is the collapse. So what does lecithin do? It decreases the surface tension. So whatever things are decreasing the surface tension, you call them as surfactant. So whenever you don't have that lecithin, what is lecithin? Lecithin is a phospholipid. It is acting as surfactant. What is surfactant? That decreases surface tension. If you don't have this lecithin, your alveoli will collapse, and that is known as atelectasis. Cystic fibrosis is a genetic disorder. You will study it in botany. Emphysema and asthma you have done. So answer is 2. So the another reason of atelectasis is decrease in the lecithin concentration. Next. Which of the following is occupational lung disorder? Very simple, silicosis. Answer 2. What is anthracis? It occurs due to anthrax. This is a different one. It occurs through the, some cattle like buffalo and cow. It's a bacterial. Emphysema due to cigarette smoking, and this is another disorder. This is related with some muscles, and it occurs due to a bacteria Clostridium. Answer is 2. Next. Pneumotaxic center can moderate the function of respiratory rhythm center. It is present in. So it is asking about pneumotaxic center. It is in pons. It is telling pneumotaxic center can change the functioning of respiratory rhythm center. Why? Because it's a switch off center and it tells respiratory rhythm center to increase the rate of breathing. So where it is present in pons. Answer is 2. Next. High PO2, low CO2, lesser H positive ion and lower temperature are favorable for. So, if there is more oxygen, less CO2, less H positive, less temperature, all these factors causes left shift. And in left shift, we have less P50 value. Fine. And it was favorable for formation of oxyhemoglobin. So, it is favorable for not the dissociation, but causes or formation of oxyhemoglobin that causes left shift. So answer is 3. So this is very important. This topic is very important. You need to understand it very carefully. Fine. Next. Thank you. So this was it about this chapter. You will find so much things which are, a little, you will say, oh, that's extra, oh, that's difficult. Nothing is difficult, trust me, and nothing is extra. Everything is given in NCERT in just one sentences. And I have told you everything in detail, like so that you can understand it very carefully. Trust me, whatever I have taught you here, it's all NCERT, nothing outside it. So just trust yourself and trust me, obviously. And if you don't get one thing at a time, don't worry. Just go back in the video and watch it again and again till you get it, till you achieve it. Fine. So don't worry about it. It's a very interesting chapter. It contains a lot of weightage in NEET as well. And just do it. Just do it. All right. Bye bye. I'll meet you in the next class.